Philadelphia Group Station, live from the Comcast Business Studios. 97.5, The Fanatic. John Kincade, Andrew Salciunas. This is Kincade and Salciunas. 97.5, The Fanatic, and 97.5thefanatic.com.
Well, we can say officially, thank God, the preseason is over. And we can also say the Phillies won a series against a team with a plus 500 record. So a good weekend overall to be a Philadelphia sports fan, mainly because the preseason's over, and that's all I care about. John Kincade out for the week. Connor Thomas in his chair. It's Kincade and Salciunas right here, 97.5 The Fanatic.
This is Kincade and Salciunas.
I believe it would be a failure for the Philadelphia Eagles, the 2024 Philadelphia Eagles, if they do not win the NFC East. The Eagles have had a quiet training camp.
And to me, I look at it and say, it's wonderful to have peace and serenity out in South Philly.
Kincade and Salciunas. John Kincade, Andrew Salciunas.
97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
And a good Monday morning, Philadelphia. I'm Andrew Salciunas alongside my man Connor Thomas, who is in for John Kincade. Connor, good morning.
Great morning. Nice to see the Phils wake up a little bit. Nice to know the preseason's over, like you said. What's not to like?
I mean, it's a great weekend. 16 hits yesterday for the Phillies. I think they finished with 50 in the series. They absolutely needed something like that. 11-3 last night against the Royals after they lose game one of the series because Taijuan Walker, Mr. 88-mile-an-hour fastball, was getting roughed up. And so thank God that game was over and done with in the first game of the series, and they were able to win the next two. So Phil's winning the series against the Kansas City Royals. We'll obviously talk about that as the show continues. But we are less than 2 weeks away from the start of the Eagles season when they take on the Packers in Sao Paulo on September 6th. Friday Night Football. It's going to be really cool. We've only seen that once in the history of the NFL, a Friday night game, so just the second time. And I think it's the first time where it's scheduled as a Friday night instead of it being some sort of weather delay, like a Thursday night game getting pushed because of some storm. So we have Friday Night Football. We're less than 2 weeks away, and the preseason is finally over, and I celebrate that. But I thought of something, a topic coming in this morning. And it stemmed off of something that happened during the pregame show. Believe it or not, we did do a pregame show for preseason week number 3. Myself, Bill Colarulo, and Connor Thomas. We will be handling the pregame festivities this season for the Eagles. We can't wait. It's going to be a lot of fun. But preseason week number 3, there wasn't really much to dive into. We weren't really focusing on matchups. We weren't really focusing on many position battles because none of the stars were going to play. We were curious by some of the guys who were going to dress and who were not going to dress. What did that mean for their futures? And we'll dive into that as the show goes on because they got to get down to their final cuts as this week goes on. But Bill Colarulo said something to us, Connor. He kind of posed a question. Whether or not this Eagles offense on paper is the greatest offense in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles. And it's full offense, not just skill positions. It's also the offensive line. And it's kind of hard to deny that. Now, if you really want to go deep, if you really want to dive deep into it, this is not the best offensive line in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles. I could say this is the best wide receiver duo in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles. I do not believe that Jalen Hurts is the best quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles, but what he is to throw to is more than what Donovan McNabb ever had, except for 1 year at TO, what Carson Wentz had, etc. And it was fun to have that kind of conversation because it gets you excited for the season.
For sure. No, it definitely does. It's better. Here's the ultimate thing, and we're going to dive deeper into this, and you're going to pose the question that we start with, but it's better to have this to talk about than, like, for example, I know they're different franchises. Across the state, Pittsburgh is trying to figure out if they want to start Russell Wilson or if they want to start Justin Fields.
Right.
Like, that's a miserable place to be. I think sometimes we get caught up in the focus on Philadelphia. I know that's something else we're going to talk about later on in the show. Mm-hmm. But it's really, really good here compared to a lot of other places. These are the fun conversations to have.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, we could be having the conversations of, oh, is Jalen Reagor, was that the right pick? That was just what we did a couple of years ago.
The answer would be no.
Right? Like, we now have a legitimate offense that we can get excited for going into a season. And then I started thinking about people, but I thought about myself. Because I'll be honest, Connor, part of me felt a little icky when we started talking about it because we haven't seen it yet. I remember our Phillies conversation that we had. and our man Joe the Cynic reminded of us last week. Back in July, right after the sweep of the Dodgers, we asked the question, is this the greatest Phillies team in the history of the franchise, championship aside? And I was still hesitant to say it because I saw 2011 in full. But if I wanted to start projecting, yeah, they could have won up more than 102 games, had this horrible 2-month stretch not happen. And if they didn't have that horrible stretch, if they did end up having more wins than the Phillies in 2011, then yes, it would have been the best team in the history of the franchise. We hadn't even seen this Eagles team yet. Like, I feel kind of gross saying something when we didn't even see a drive in the preseason. So I want to know from the audience today, and you could text and you could call in 610-632-0975. Do you like hearing us here on the radio in local Philadelphia or the national media, guys like Dan Orlovsky talking about the trio of Jahan Dotson, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith being the best in the entire NFL? Do you like it when you hear people talk about how this group or that group or this team or that team or this player is the greatest of all time or is the greatest in the NFL this year? It doesn't have to be all time. It doesn't have to be the last 10 years, last 20 years. It could just be this current day. Do you like hearing that kind of stuff? Or do you feel kind of gross hearing it and you want to see it play out first before you come to some determination? Are you one of those people that would rather be the underdog? You don't want people thinking highly of your team. Do you sometimes keep yourself from going a little too far in your excitement? I like to go all in. I like to just dive right in and have fun. But I'll be honest, Connor, before we even see a drive or a snap, it's kind of weird for me to say that this is the best offense ever.
Yeah, and a couple years ago, that version of Connor would have said, dude, you're crazy. Look how talented this team is. Look at the names. Look at the coaching staff. Look at what we've heard and read from beat reporters. Like, everything is pointing in the right direction. We had a conversation last week about things being simple and smooth. John and I did one of the days you were out, and it was just, it makes so much sense to believe in this team. And as much as I'm a move on from last year guy, you do still have to consider that last year made so much sense for that team to be good. Like, last year had a lot of talent. And I'm not just saying just like one collapse has to carry over. But once you believe that there's a 1% chance that that's possible in any season, it's hard to believe something without seeing it anymore. And that's where we're at with the Eagles.
Yeah, but like, I get the collapse. Like, I'm not even thinking about it that way. I look at this team on paper and I go, yeah, this is great. But again, it's only on paper, just like how this Phillies team, talent-wise, is on paper. Now, we've also seen them have success in the playoffs the last 2 years, getting the World Series 2 years ago and LCS last year. But you never know when spots are going to happen. You never know when a guy's going to get banged up. You never know when a guy might play. Maybe at some point it's the decline of their career, right? Before this weekend, JT Realmuto looked like he was vastly declining from what he was when he was – you and I had this conversation over the weekend. You couldn't make even an argument that he wasn't the best catcher in baseball. He was, but at some point that was going to go downhill. At some point that's going to happen for some of these players offensively with the Eagles. At some point we'll find out, is Cam Jurgens this huge fall off from Jason Kelce, or is he going to be just fine like I expect him to be? But again, this is just expectations. We don't know anything. And so I don't want to think about collapses last year. I just want to talk about, all right, your expectations. Do you almost feel weird or almost feel gross or want to keep yourself grounded from getting overly excited? Because it's kind of hard not to when you look at this team.
Well, you know how I normally default when it comes to sports. You don't have to push me very far to be positive.
Of course.
And you brought up, like, declining or how much we know about these players. Like, let's think about the guys. I'm specifically thinking offense because we all know this conversation is offensively centric. The defense, they could be good, but we don't know. There's a lot of question marks, and that's something that we're going to need to see even more. But the guys that are talented on this offensive side of the ball, they're not even close to done. Like, there's one guy on the offensive side of the ball that I think is on the back nine and could have a regression year, and it's Lane Johnson at right tackle.
Okay.
And even that, like, a Lane Johnson regression would still put him as one of the probably top 5 tackles in football.
I would imagine so, yeah.
Everybody else, they're young, they're talented, they're established, they're healthy. If you're not going to believe in the ceiling of this team, if you're not going to believe that the talent level of this roster is not one of the best in franchise history, you're going to be waiting your entire life to say that, and it'll never come around because this is as undeniable as it gets, the talent level of this football team.
All right, and look, I'm more with you than I'm not, but I just think about literally 1 month ago, a month and a half ago, we had this exact same conversation. Exactly, like, seriously, word for word. If you rewind the clock, rewind the tape, a month and a half ago, we had the exact same conversation. It was just about the Phillies instead. It was, is this the greatest Phillies team in the history of the franchise? And then all of a sudden, a 2-month stretch happened, or a month and 9 week, whatever it was. A stretch happened where it was freaking horrible. And so I can't help myself but go, man, I literally just said that about the Phillies 2 months ago. And now I'm about to say it about the Eagles offense going into the season. Now, I do feel this way about the Eagles offense. I look at A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith as the greatest duo already because they've done it. It's not necessarily on paper when they've already done it. The greatest duo in the history of the Eagles franchise. Saquon Barkley might not end up being the greatest Eagles running back, but who knows? It could be one of these, his career combined with what he did with the Giants, he could end up being one of the better running backs who ever played in the Eagles, right? We've seen this all the time. Peter Forsberg in Flyers history, right? He wasn't the best Flyer ever, but he was one of the better players in the NHL, and then comes over to Philadelphia. Jaromir Jagr, right? He played 1 year here, but you could say he was one of the greatest Flyers ever because he at least wore the uniform. There are a lot of players on this Eagles offense where I can go, they are either the best at what they're doing right now, best all time, or could be the best if you combine their entire careers. I want to just dive into that. I just want to be excited about that. But I just said this about the Phillies.
And the crazy thing, too, is rationally we shouldn't be saying it, right? If you think about it logically, and we have this conversation all the time with John about logic and sports fandom and how they don't see eye to eye. They're contrasting ideas because the idea of being a fanatic is completely anti-logic. But the Phillies, when we had that conversation, we'd seen months of them playing the sport. We'd seen the team play together. We had seen them beat other teams and win series and put themselves in a position where that conversation based on accomplishment was a valid one to have. We haven't seen these guys play in a preseason game.
Right.
So it's just like, now, yes, there's carryover on the offense. We've seen these guys play together a large majority. The newcomers on offense are Jahan Dotson, Mekhi Becton, and Cam Jurgens switching a position. And I don't even know if I want to call Saquon Barkley a newcomer because he's such a sure thing to be a plus at running back.
Absolutely.
So I don't know. I understand what you're saying about being conflicted. But I believe in the talent level of this team. I believe in the ceiling of this team. And until they prove me wrong, I'm going to believe that's what they're going to be.
All right, you can climb in on the text line or the phone line, 610-632-0975. Do you like hearing or personally thinking, right? Because this could also be your own personal belief, but you just don't want to put it out in the universe. You don't want to say it out loud because you're afraid of what could happen based off of what has happened in the city. Do you like hearing that this player is the best at or the best since? Do you like hearing that this team could be the best in the conference, the best in the division? They're a surefire lock. Do you like hearing that kind of stuff, or do you try to keep yourself grounded and hesitate from getting overly excited? Even though I know you're excited for the start of the season. I know that you can't wait for week 1 on Friday night and 2 Fridays from now, just like we can't wait for it. I know how excited you are. Right, we talk to you guys every single day about the Eagles on this station, so I know how fired up you are. But do you try to keep yourself at bay as much as possible when it comes to expectations before you even saw a snap? Jalen Hurts didn't even take a snap this preseason. You can text it. You can call in 610-632-0975. That's going to be our main topic today. But, of course, Phillies are always on the table. They take 2 of 3 against the Royals. Connor's wearing the shirt today. Of course he is. He believes he did it all.
It's magical, baby.
It is
I didn't
magical.
do it. The shirt did it. No. It's not about me. It's about the shirt.
11 hits in game 1 of that series, even though they lost, but that's more so because of Taijuan Walker, and we'll talk about him as the show continues. 18 hits in game 2 against the Kansas City Royals in an 11-2 win, and then 11-3 yesterday, 16 hits. So just in those 2 wins alone, they have 34 hits. 50 hits pretty much, almost 50 hits in the entire series. Just an incredible weekend for the Phillies offense. And again, for 2 starting pitchers, you had a great day. I mean, it was great to see Ranger Suarez come back out there, pitches 5 innings. They weren't going to let him go too deep, but he looks pretty good. And that's a huge jolt for this team.
We talked about it earlier in the season with Ranger. And the offense, like, it's great to see them back, but we know the talent level of those players and everything. Like, the rotation is kind of they're going to be the calling card of this team. You see all the money in the lineup, but ultimately, pitching wins in October. And what really made the rotation amazing to start the season is Ranger Suarez was kind of that bridge between, hey, we have these great guys at the front that we paid, and Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola. We believe in them long term. We have these guys we're not too sure what we're getting out of, and Christopher Sanchez and Taijuan Walker. One of those great, one of those awful. And Ranger Suarez was the bridge that covered the gap between the high-end starters. And he's so important to making momentum happen. And that's a beautiful thing to see. The offense, you got back-to-back 4-hit games from individual players, but the whole team is putting better swings. And you know what? I was reading something from Matt Gelb on The Athletic this morning. It just came out. Just like some takeaways on what's going on with the Phillies right now. Talking about the percentage of breaking balls they've seen. Because you know how that came out after the series in Atlanta. They saw the most breaking balls. They saw more in the series against the Royals. They made a quick adjustment. They attacked the way that they were being attacked. It was just it was a great weekend. We have to see it build, though.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying they're back by any means because they beat a team with a plus 500 record. I mean, I was refusing to say that they were back on that West Coast trip. I refused to say that they were back after winning 4 in a row, 1 against the Marlins, 3 against the freaking Nationals. And then they kind of proved me right with that pitiful performance against the Braves over the weekend, during last week. But it was nice to see that win. And one of the things that I really liked, so I got a tweet from Scorpio Lord over the weekend.
Oh, what do you say, Scorpio?
The 24th was Saturday. So I tweeted out, this is the Phillies team I knew and loved, right? Because the offense finally came back to life. And Scorpio Lord responds with what? Home runs or bust? This is the team they have been for 3 years now. If they don't hit home runs, they don't win, period. Look, I get where he has that opinion. And yes, they do rely on a lot of home runs. They scored 26 runs in this series. 4 on Friday, 11 on Saturday, 11 on Sunday. You know how many home runs they hit this series? 26 runs. You know how many home runs they hit?
4?
3.
Yeah.
JT Realmuto had 2 of them Saturday night, and then Nick Castellanos had 1 yesterday. So out of the 26 runs, and I'm not ripping Scorpio Lord, but it's good to see a team put up 26 runs that we all kind of agree is somewhat reliant on the home run. They put up 26 runs on just 3 home runs. It was a lot of doubles. There was small ball. There was base hits. There was hitting behind runners. I mean, they look like a baseball team this weekend.
Yeah, finally. It took long enough to see it. Now, again, we talk about what we saw. We've seen so many times, not so many times, because I wish we would have seen so many times. We wouldn't be having the same conversation about this team. But over this stretch, the past 2 months, we've seen series like this. Maybe not quite to this level against that good of a team. But we've seen moments where they've seemed to put it together. Remember how you felt after they took 2 or 3 from the Dodgers? It felt like, oh, wow. That's the one. They needed this series. They're on the road. They're scuffling. They go out and they win it. This is the point where you break out. And then you go to Arizona and get smoked. So I set the line when we were talking about how are you going to determine when this Phillies team is out of this stretch. You win 3 of 4 series. They've won 2 of their last 3 series. So now eyes turn to a home series with the Houston Astros.
So are you counting the Nationals one?
Absolutely. Okay. Why wouldn't I?
Because they stink.
Yeah, well, the Phillies have stunk for 2 months, man.
Okay.
We'll take 3 out of 4 to me is enough sample size to say you're consistently beating teams. And the chances that 1 or 2 of those 3 teams that you beat in series or those teams you're playing in series, the chances are 1 of those at least is a good baseball team, if not 2. And that will be what the stretch is. So that's what I'm going to believe in it, depending on the result of this Astros series.
Yeah, and I think that's fair, especially because, look, I know the Nationals are the Nationals, but this is a tough stretch overall with the Braves and Royals, Astros, and then Braves again. Now, if they take 2 or 3 against the Astros, that's great. I just really hope they don't then lay an egg against the Braves again at home. I mean, they laid an egg. Their series against the Braves, it wasn't just that they lost 2 of 3. It was that they didn't have, a heartbeat. They had 3 hits in that final game of that series. And even the game that they won, they had 5 hits, and 2 of those came from Weston Wilson. And you know that Weston Wilson isn't going to be some big piece as this season continues and as they get into the playoffs. So I can't see them. I don't want to see them lay any more eggs.
No, I'm with you.
That's kind of what it's come down to. You're going to lose a series here and there. Obviously, they're not going to win out the rest of the way with all these series. But when they look lifeless for a stretch of games, that's when I have a problem. Obviously, this weekend, they didn't look lifeless. Friday night, in the game that they lost, they didn't look lifeless. It was just Taijuan Walker's abysmal. But they didn't look lifeless throughout the entire series, which is great. I can't see 2, 3, 4 games in a row where it looks like the offense has no clue what they're doing at the plate.
And something interesting is you are far from the only person who feels that way. I feel that way. I think basically everybody in the fan base feels that way.
Everyone should.
And when we talk a little bit more in depth about this series with the Astros that begins tonight, I think it's bigger than just this series. I think it's huge for something not on the field at Citizens Bank Park that we're going to talk about coming up.
Okay. All right. So you can climb in 610-632-0975, the number to text in or call in. When it comes to the Eagles, and this is an overall fandom conversation. It's not necessarily specific about the Eagles. It's just based off of what was said over the weekend. Bill Colarulo talking about how this Eagles offense on paper could be the greatest offense in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles. Do you like hearing that stuff? Or does that kind of make you feel a little weird, right? You go, I'm not ready to say something like that when I haven't seen them play yet, because we had the exact same conversation about the Phillies a month and a half ago, and you saw what has since happened about that. And overall Phillies discussion on the table. We'll start previewing a little bit about their next series against the Astros coming up next, because pitching matchup-wise, this plays out well for the Phillies. Does it continue following this series against the Royals? We'd love to hear from you. 610-632-0975. It is Kincade and Salciunas. John out for the week. Connor in for him right here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
On Kincade Salciunas, Johnny out for the week. Connor in for him. Brendan Gunn sitting in Connor's chair this week. Brendan, good morning. What's going on, man?
Yo, Chunas, what's going on, man? What's up, Connor? Good Monday morning with you guys.
A beautiful Monday morning coming off of an incredible Little League World Series championship that we'll talk about later because you hate children. All right, so real quick before we get back to our main Eagles discussion, I know we got some texts coming in. You can text the show, call the show, 610-632-0975. And our main topic today is whether or not you like hearing stuff like, oh, this is the best since. Oh, this will be the best ever. Oh, we have Super Bowl expectations when you haven't seen it yet. Do you like hearing that stuff? Or did something like last year, the collapse that you saw, or not that they had a bad weekend, the Phillies had a great weekend, but you know what happened over the last 2 months when the conversation started about 2 months ago about the Phillies being the best team in franchise history. Do you like hearing that stuff knowing that you have seen these things unfold in the opposite direction despite it being so good or despite it being so good on paper? We'd love to hear from you, 610-632-0975. But real quick, I just want to look ahead a little bit because can the Phillies keep this going? They can, but they're playing a good Houston Astros team. And the pitching matchups are great over the weekend, but they still favor the Phillies. Zach Wheeler gets the start tonight. Aaron Nola goes tomorrow. Christopher Sanchez goes on Wednesday. Ronel Blanco goes tonight for the Astros, who's having a very good season. Then Verlander, who, look, he's still Justin Verlander. He's just also another year older. He hasn't pitched all season long because of the injury. I don't know how many starts he's made. He's just 3-3 so far this year. And then Spencer Arrighetti goes on Wednesday. Pitching matchup-wise, the Phillies have the advantage in, I would say, clearly two of them.
Yeah, and like Blanco has upside, but he's still not like you don't look at him as this lockdown every time he goes out there pitcher. The numbers are solid.
Right.
And where he really came on the scene, his first start of the year, he threw a no-hitter.
No-hitter, right.
But I don't see the Astros no-hitting the Phillies in Philadelphia.
Well, that happened before.
I know. I hate to bring it up, but I had to. No, I mean, you're absolutely right about the pitching matchups. And it's the great thing about, we talked about Ranger Suarez coming back, honestly. Now, you have another hole in the 5 spot right now with Taijuan Walker, but it feels much more built out of a rotation with Ranger Suarez back and healthy. Like now you look at series and you don't have a complete, this is a, as Doc Rivers would say, scheduled loss.
Right.
Because you're throwing a guy out there that shouldn't be out there.
Right. Now, the concern is, right, and I'm just going to say this, and then we'll get to some text messages about the Eagles. I don't like saying you better win 2 of 3 or you better sweep or blah, blah, blah when it's against a good team like the Houston Astros. It's one thing for me to say they better win a series against the Nationals or they should sweep the Marlins in a 2-game series, and they did not do that. But they are taking on the Houston Astros, and they're throwing their horses this week with Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, and Christopher Sanchez. I know the Atlanta Braves have injuries all over the place, but the Atlanta Braves just took 2 of 3 against you last week. In that series, if Walker pitches, and we'll talk about that later on, Walker will be scheduled to pitch. Ranger Suarez, his second start, and look, he looked great over the weekend. Let's see how his arm is feeling after having that start. Right. Sometimes that second start is a little difficult because he's now working out a soreness that he hasn't really had to work with over a month now. Kobe Allard is going to get a start. It's a 4-game series, right? So you'll get Zach Wheeler on the tail end of it. But right now, it's Walker, it's Allard, and it's Ranger Suarez. So you better take care of business now when you can at home against the Astros with your horses going in Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, and Christopher Sanchez. Because if you don't, now all of a sudden you're going up against a 4-game series against your division rival who are 6 games behind you, and you're throwing your back end of the rotation starters.
Yes. Is it crazy to call the Astros series bigger than the Braves series? Like, is that a nuts
Well,
statement?
you said it to me during the break. I would say yes, but the way you explain it, I don't think it's crazy.
Because when I look at it, I think about, I told you it's going to be at Citizens Bank Park. It's not on the field. It's going to be the fan base. It's all you out there that'll be down at Citizens Bank Park. And I'm not blaming you at all because I think this would be an appropriate reaction. But let's say the Phillies come back and they lose 2 of 3 to the Astros, and they look kind of like the team that's been in this slump and feels like Kansas City wasn't a breaking out point. Going into that series against the Atlanta Braves, you're going to be looking at a situation where, like, you're up 6 games right now.
Right.
You lose 2 of 3, and the Braves take care of 2 of 3 going into this series. Like, you're going to be in a situation where if you get swept 4 games, Atlanta will be tied with you for the division lead.
Well, no, they'll be ahead of you because the head-to-head, I mean, they've been beating you up all season long.
And the season series will be over. So, yes, they will be ahead of you by tiebreaker. And I'm not saying, like, that's a realistic thing to go in worried about. But if you play well against the Astros, you're going to feel like, or at least I will, and I think this is where the fan base will be at Citizens Bank Park, there will be momentum to say, hey, we can close the Braves out right here.
Yes.
We can get to a place where this division race is over.
Whereas if you drop 2 of 3,
that building's going to be tight.
Yeah, it's going to be nervous energy. So, yeah, I mean, look, it's a very important series for multiple things. For the mentality of the fan base, like you just mentioned. And, oh, by the way, your best pitchers are going this 3-game series against the Astros and not against the Atlanta Braves. So if you don't take care of business, and let's not act like we haven't seen the Phillies lose a 3-2 game with Zach Wheeler on the mound or Aaron Nola on the mound. We literally just saw it against the Atlanta Braves last week. If they don't take care of business against the Astros in these next 3 games, it's going to get dicey. So these next 3 games are extremely important. It starts tonight.
Can we do something real quick, too?
What's that?
I don't want to move past this without giving the respect this guy deserves for just a simple move. But Rob Thompson choosing to start Colby Allard and make sure that he has his top pitchers lined up for the series against the Astros in a big momentum spot. I'm not saying, like, it helps. He didn't know that they were going to score 11 runs again.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to do the good thing that Garrett Stubbs played over JT.
Right,
like,
no,
that's
of course.
insane. But to give guys extra time and set up your pitchers.
Yeah,
for
but
a big series.
I understood the backlash. Like, I saw John tweeting, complaining about the Kobe Allard decision. I saw Bill upset about JT Realmuto not being in the lineup yesterday. And I understood it because you were hoping to win a series against a good team. I know you just won a series not long ago against the Nationals, but against a legit opponent like the Kansas City Royals, you were looking to win a series. And on the rubber match, that Sunday game, you take out JT Realmuto. It wasn't a full Sunday lineup. Like, you still had Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Bohm, Castellanos, Stott, Marsh, Rojas, Stubbs. It was still a full lineup, just Stubbs is in instead of JT Realmuto. But the Colby Allard decision, I understood why John was upset with it when it first came out. But to your point, it was to set up the rotation for these next 3 games against the Houston Astros, which might go a long way for them. After winning yesterday, and if they can take 2 or 3 against the Astros, like you said, you have the opportunity to wipe away the Braves after the series against Houston.
Yeah, you're gambling as a manager. Like, as a fan, we sit down on the couch or we go to the ball game or we're out at a bar and you're focused on that day. How do we win this baseball game? Because this is what I'm doing with my next 3 hours. This is how I'm spending my night on the weekend. This is what I want to do on a Sunday afternoon. For a manager, it's not always how do we win this game. It's how do we find a way to give ourselves a chance to win this game while also giving ourselves a good chance to continue to win games. And he gambled yesterday. It paid off. If it hadn't, we would have ripped him. They go out and they win. And I know, like, you didn't see, like, Cy Young stuff from Colby Allard, who gave up 8 hits and a couple of runs, but
it wasn't bad. That's what Aaron Nola did his last start. Like, it's
right. It wasn't
bad.
It wasn't amazing, but it got the job done, and that deserves credit for taking that chance to set up the rotation. We would rip him if it didn't go well because it was the right decision, or it worked out to be. I think we deserve to acknowledge that.
Well, I also read it this way. I didn't read it just as setting up the rotation for Houston. I read it also as, all right, let's have this guy pitch today, and then in 5 days he's back in the rotation because we're taking somebody else out.
I wonder who that would be.
That's how I read the situation with the Colby Allard. Honestly,
could be it too.
You bringing up the setting up the rotation for Houston, I didn't think about that until you literally just said it. My first immediate thought when I saw Colby Allard will now be pitching was, all right, they're going to work this guy into the rotation, and they're going to do some funky stuff, right? You know, your Tyler Phillips will come up at some. I know he got sent down. He'll come back up at some point and start. Like, they'll do some weird stuff because I think they're going to try to do whatever they can to juggle the situation where Taijuan Walker doesn't start again. And we'll talk about that more as the show continues. But you can climb in 610-632-0975. Overall Phillies discussion after their weekend series win against the Kansas City Royals. And when it comes to the Eagles, do you like hearing, or any team, it doesn't have to be the Eagles, any team about Philadelphia sports, when you hear stuff like, oh, this is the best offense of all time. Oh, this is going to be the best offense in the NFC. I said that during the pregame show on Saturday, that the Eagles' offense could be, on paper, the best offense in the NFC, skill position-wise, offensive line, you name it. but I feel weird saying it, knowing what has happened in the past, knowing what I said literally 2 months ago about the Phillies. What do we have on the text line this morning, B-Gun?
Yeah, we got Blaine in Kentucky checking in. He says, I honestly love what we're hearing this year about the Eagles, which is both positive and negative. We get the respect for our wide receiver core and weapons as a whole, but we also get the disrespect about Hurts, Sirianni, and the team after the collapse. So this year is bringing the best of both worlds, both positive and negative, which is a good balance, he said.
Okay, and look, it has been talked about. I mean, you think about it. Every single headline from a national media standpoint now that we're getting closer to football season is Nick Sirianni coaching for his job? Like, yes. He's coaching for his job, ESPN, Fox, CBS, whatever network you want to pay attention to, he is coaching for his job. So Blaine's right that there is still the negative talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. The defense will still be questioned, obviously. But we're talking about how Vic Fangio is going to walk right in here and save everything. Kellen Moore is going to walk right in here and save everything. Clearly, when we talk about that stuff during the show, we get pushback from a lot of the audience. So I imagine when you hear that kind of stuff, you roll your eyes or you feel icky and you go, no, you can't say something like that because the Eagles have had success in the past. They've won a Super Bowl. Are you telling me this offense is better than the Super Bowl offense? Maybe.
They could be.
The offensive skill positions is definitely better than the Super Bowl team. Offensive line, no. But the rest of the team is. Like, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are better than Alshon Jeffrey and Torrey Smith. And that team won the Super Bowl. And I get it. Does that mean anything? No, because I've seen a dream team finish with 4 wins, right? But it's fair to at least, or it's fun to at least have the conversation.
100%. And that's what I like about doing it. I want my teams to be good. And if I believe they are, and there's a great roster out there, we brought up the Pittsburgh quarterback situation earlier. Like, you're not choosing between Russell Wilson and Justin Fields a week before your season starts. You have everybody locked down. You have the starters where they need to be, at least on the offensive side of the ball. Like, it would not be proper fandom to me. You could disagree with this. If you're going into this season saying, well, I'm worried about this on the offensive side of the ball. I don't know. I got to wait and see it for, like, trust your eyes. Trust the talent level. We're not talking about saying, oh, Quinyon Mitchell's going to be an all-pro, and we've never seen him take a snap in the NFL before. We're talking about Saquon Barkley.
Right.
We're talking about A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Jalen Hurts, who's been in the MVP conversation 2 years in a row in December, as John brings up, and absolutely correctly so.
Yeah.
A great offensive line. Believe in these things.
I like that. All right. That's good passion.
It shouldn't be that hard.
Well, it can be, though. And I get why it can be because of what happened last year. I mean, I don't like to go to that. I think they are going to move on. I think a lot of it had to do with coaching, and I think they moved on from all the coaches. And the head coach that is still here pretty much lost all of his duties, right? He's just going to kind of be the motivator at this point. But I get why people do have that thought. I get why people don't want to dive right in. So our question, do you like hearing all this positive stuff about the Eagles when maybe we might go a little too far? But too far sometimes is more fun, as Connor says. You can text it. You can call in 610-632-0975. We dive deeper into the text line coming up next. Phillies also on the table after their 2 of 3 against the Royals this weekend. Garrett Stubbs with a big day yesterday. Unbelievable. 4 for 4 yesterday for him. But do they take care of business against the Astros this week? They better. It's Kincade and Salciunas, Connor, and for John right here, 97.5 The Fanatic.
Tyrone Johnson.
It doesn't seem to matter who the Phillies play.
647 on Kincade and Salciunas, 97.5 The Fanatic. So our question today, and it's a fandom discussion. It's not necessarily just about the Eagles, but it stems off of the Eagles. Bill Colarulo this past weekend during the pregame show that me and Bill and Connor are a part of. Going into the season, Bill believes that this could be, on paper, the greatest offense in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, let's dive into it real quick. So, nobody's saying that Jalen Hurts is the greatest quarterback in Eagles franchise history. Well, there are people that do say that. People do say it. I think that's completely disrespectful to Donovan McNabb, which he was disrespected his entire career, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I think that's completely disrespectful to Donovan McNabb, but that doesn't mean I don't believe that Jalen Hurts couldn't be one day. Like he very well could be. If he has the success that he has had so far in his 3 years as a starter, and with the weapons around him, and the weapons that he will have around, like A.J. Brown's not going away anytime soon. Neither is Devontae Smith, and neither is Jahan Dotson. Like these guys are going to be here for a couple of years. So is Saquon Barkley, and you know how much the Eagles believe in the offensive line. Like Jalen Hurts very well could become a better quarterback in the franchise's history than Donovan McNabb. Now, credit to Howie Roseman, Jalen Hurts has had a lot more to work with than with Donovan McNabb, but that continues the discussion. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are by far, there is no debate, they are the greatest duo in the Eagles franchise history, wide receiver duo. And remember, a couple weeks ago, we read that article from Reuben Frank where he made the case that they could go down as the greatest duo in the history of the NFL if this continues. So far, back-to-back seasons with 1,000 yards receiving. Now, they've had the benefit of the extra game, which adds to that. But we haven't seen, I think, it was Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne the last time we've seen something like this?
I do think that's a bridge too far, but it's not a conversation that's immediately like when I hear that from Reuben Frank, I'm like, no way, right? But it's not guys that you wouldn't expect to be part of that hypothetical conversation.
Right. And look, he had numbers to back it up.
Right. No, it's not a shot at him. It feels like a step further, but we are talking about like greatest offenses in franchise history. So that tracks for the Philadelphia Eagles.
And then, of course, Saquon Barkley. I don't believe Saquon Barkley will go down as the greatest running back in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles. I believe that man is getting inducted into the Eagles Hall of Fame this year in LaShawn McCoy, right? He's leader in all-purpose yards for Philadelphia Eagles, rushing yards, you name it. But Saquon Barkley, with what he did in New York and what I believe he will still do here in Philadelphia, you can make the case that he's one of the greatest running backs that ever put on the Eagles uniform.
Stay with me on this one because people are going to get immediately annoyed when I compare him to this player.
Okay.
I'm not talking personality-wise. I'm not talking ability to win. Football is a different sport. Very James Harden-esque.
Okay, yeah, I got what you're saying.
It's a player with undeniable talent who has put up numbers other places. Now, Harden was older, obviously, and a bunch of different. Yeah. But basically, it's like this player that you know is like a great player.
He's a top 75 player all time.
And you're going to look back and be like, wow, one of the best point guards has ever put on this jersey.
And he was good here.
Absolutely.
People like to ignore that. He was very good here.
That's what Saquon's going to be. He's not going to be like, this Eagles legend forever, unless he win a Super Bowl, and then everybody.
But he might be one of the best running backs that ever donned the Eagles jersey.
Exactly.
And then if you add the offensive line, no, it's not the greatest offensive line in Eagles franchise history, but this offensive line is pretty damn good. And so when you start looking at the offense in general, not just franchise history, you start comparing it to the rest of the league. I look at the 49ers and the Lions, the two teams in the NFC that can come close to what this Eagles offense has in terms of wide receiver duo, tight end, running back, what the quarterback does, and the offensive line in front of them. They're all pretty close. The San Francisco 49ers are right there. But I will take Hurts, and I will take the Eagles wide receiver duo over Brock Purdy and the duo of Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel.
So you say that a lot. I don't know that I will. I really respect Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk as a duo. I think that's a very, very tight conversation. And I'm not trying to talk down on Devontae Smith or A.J. Brown. I think they're in that conversation for sure. It's probably a coin flip. I don't see it as clear, I'll take these guys over those guys.
Okay, I see it clearly.
Okay.
That's how I see it.
Fair.
So when you hear this stuff, does it excite you, or do you kind of get nervous and you go, all right, hold on, I don't want to go too far. Let's go to Silver in Germantown. Silver, you're on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to take it too far because, I do think Jalen Hurts is the greatest quarterback in Eagles history. I mean, Will go down right now. He ain't finished his career out, but when it comes to clutch factor and stuff like that, that's what I pay attention to. And Donovan McNabb came up short in a lot of them big games, them NFC Championship games.
But here what you just said. He came up short in those NFC Championship games, the 5 that he was in.
And Jalen Hurts in one Super Bowl probably combined had a better game in that Super Bowl than Donovan McNabb had in all 4 of them NFC Championships.
All I know is they both played in one Super Bowl, and Donovan McNabb played in 4 more NFC Championship games. Hurts can go down. Don't get me wrong. Hurts can go down. I will say it again. Hurts can go down as the greatest quarterback in Eagles franchise history. It is disrespectful to Donovan McNabb to say that he already is.
And all I know is in that Super Bowl, Hurts did everything he can for his team to win. He fumbled in the first act, but I'm saying
no, he did. He definitely He played better than Patrick Mahomes in that game. You're right.
If Hurts win that Super Bowl, if the Eagles win that Super Bowl, Hurts get that MVP, they're not even talking about McNabb no more. But you know, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
At the end of the day, yeah. So not to get over, but as far as that, the Eagles having the best offensive team in NFL. You said Eagles history or NFL history?
Eagles history, but comparing to other top offenses, go for it.
Yeah, I was about to compare it to all the other offenses because, I grew up in the 90s, early 2000s, and the best offense back then was the greatest show on turf.
Yeah, and you start looking at with Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt and Marshall Faulk.
Wait, do you really
thanks for the call, Silver.
Okay, he really thinks it's close to that, huh?
Here's the big difference. A couple of differences. They had Hall of Famers on that offensive line, which Lane Johnson is one. The rest are still. We'll see how it goes. Kurt Warner is he's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts still has to do a lot. Skill position wise, yeah, sure.
Right, but I mean, also Saquon isn't Marshall Faulk yet.
No, he's not.
That team was unbelievable. Then the thing with these are projections, right? Jalen Hurts has played 3 years as a starting quarterback of this football team.
Right.
McNabb had 11.
Yeah,
that's why that's
exactly.
not a conversation yet.
No,
because
it's
the sample
not.
size is totally different.
And that's why I keep on saying he could go down. It's disrespectful to say that he already is.
But part of this conversation is a projection.
Yes, it is. And do you like these kinds of projections, or does it make you feel uncomfortable? So we'll dive deeper into it. I know we got texts coming in. We'll get to more calls. You can climb in 610-632-0975. We'll reset the entire show. Also, we've kind of touched on it a few times, but we'll dive deeper into it coming up next. There is a man that cannot play ever again in a Phillies uniform, and I tried telling you, and you and John ganged up on me, called me crazy, called me a lunatic, and now everybody wants to be on Team Salciunas. You probably know who I'm talking about. We'll discuss it next. Coming up right here, 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
The bats come alive. I'm Brendan Gunn, and this update is brought to you by the Empire.
7:01 on Kincade and Salciunas, 97.5 The Fanatic. Coming up around 7:10, we're going to talk about Taijuan Walker. Like, I need to, actually take time to talk about him and not just ignore the fact that it happened on Friday.
It's also more complicated of a situation than just it shouldn't
It's
be.
not that complicated.
It shouldn't be, but it is because of the contract and because of the long-term stuff. You have 2 more years after this on that contract. So it's not as simple as just saying
2 more years or is next year the last one?
no. I believe he's got 2 more years. He signed a 4-year deal.
I thought it
and
was
this
a
is the second
3-year
one.
deal. Are you oh, it is a 4-year deal. Oh,
So, like I'm saying, it's a complicated situation because of everything that goes along with it. In a vacuum, you send him to the moon.
you know why it's not
But,
complicated?
Like,
It ain't my money. That's why it's not.
I got
That's
you.
why
But
it's
like
not
the people making the
complicated.
decision, it is their
All
money.
right, 7:10. 7:10. Save it.
7:10.
We'll talk about Taijuan Walker and how he should never wear a Phillies jersey really ever again, except when he's sitting in the dugout going, "Go Phillies, go Kobe Allard. You're already better than me." All right, so here's what we're talking about to start the show. We'll get to some calls and text messages. Do you like hearing or saying or even feeling that your team or your player is the best at or the best since or the best in, right? I look at this Eagles offense, and I believe it is the best Eagles offense, the best offense in the NFC. I don't think there's much of a competition except for the San Francisco 49ers and the Detroit Lions. And there are things that I like about the Eagles offenses more so than what San Francisco and Detroit provides. Now, that does not mean I think that there aren't great things about San Francisco. Christian McCaffrey is the best running back among those 3. If you were to go running back duo, Detroit has the best running back duo with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. I think their wide receivers can explode. Amon-Ra St. Brown, we already know, is a stud. We'll see if Jameson Williams explodes. Remember last year he was dealing with the gambling issue. He got hurt a little bit, and that's why you didn't see much of him. And he was a top stud wide receiver out of Alabama, and he's now going on to an offense full-time with a running back duo, another wide receiver, very much like Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, could be Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown. And, oh, by the way, they have Sam Laporta, who's a tremendous tight end, just like the Eagles have Dallas Goedert. I think those offenses, Eagles and Lions, are more comparable than the San Francisco 49ers. A little bit more. But that's because you know how I feel about Debo and Ayuk. I think Ayuk is the best receiver on that team. Debo gets all the hype. I think Ayuk is actually the better receiver on that team.
I don't know, man. I saw the Debo game last year here in Philadelphia, and
I know.
Kind of undeniable. Dude, talk trash, came out here, scored 3 times on you, and it's just he's not even a receiver, right? He's just a valuable
He's just a guy,
player. There's not a player like that on the Philadelphia Eagles, which is it makes it hard to compare.
You don't need that.
No. But I'm just saying it's more than just the straight up oh, this guy's a pure receiver, that guy's not. I don't know. I think it's closer. I think all 3 are close.
Right.
The fact that the Eagles are in that conversation shows that they're top of the NFL right now.
And it's funny. So all I'm doing is asking the question, do you like hearing this stuff, right? I'm not coming on here today making a statement, even though I do believe that they have the best offense on paper in the NFC right now. But that's not the point of the conversation. The point of the conversation today is just I want to get into the mentality of a lot of Eagles fans, Philadelphia fans, because it's a Philadelphia conversation, but it stems off of the Eagles. I'm just asking that question. And Bob checks in on Twitter, and we'll get to the texts and the calls in a second. They blew a 10-1 record last year. Calm yourself. I'm excited about the potential, but there are question marks, right? So right away, I'm not even saying, hey, is this the best Eagles offense ever? I'm just asking if you like hearing that kind of stuff. And right away, a guy named Bob on Twitter goes, no, I don't like that. Calm down.
Let me ask you something real quick, because I want to take this situation and move it somewhere else for a reason. Let's say we woke up this morning in Boston, and we were talking about the New England Patriots. And the same collapse happened, and the same players exist, and all of that same stuff goes on. The only difference is the fan base is one that has seen their team win 6 Super Bowls
dynasty,
or whatever.
yeah.
Dynastic team. Do you think that this same mentality, I don't think this is a question that even gets asked in certain other cities, because I do think there's something inherent to Philadelphia, and you brought up the underdog thing a couple times, that we love here. I wonder how much of this is a Philly thing and just the makeup of what this fan base is from years of what we've all gone through.
I don't know. I think it depends. If this happened in New York, look at what Jets fans went through last year.
Yeah, but they don't win. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Is this a product of the have we created this? Is it bigger than Philadelphia, where fans don't like to jump the gun? Is it a generational thing, or is it if you live in a city where you have not seen as much success as you probably should have, it makes it harder for you to believe, even though everything is telling you? It ultimately, does it come down to, is this Negadelphia, or is it something different?
Look, I think if a team had a historic collapse, like how about the New York Mets, right? The New York Mets haven't won a World Series, but they've been contenders for many years now, basically our whole lives except for a couple of bad seasons, right? When they had the 100-win season and lost to the Padres in the playoffs, I don't remember Mets fans the next season saying, oh, we'll be back. I think they thought about the collapse in the playoffs and immediately started talking about how they hated the playoff format and all that kind of stuff. In our case, it may not just be a Philadelphia thing, but it might be worse because of everything that's happened in the last 2 years.
Right.
Like 3 championship losses in 100 days. What you're seeing right now with the Phillies, even though they won this past weekend, what you're seeing right now with the Phillies, people are comparing it to the collapse of last year with the Eagles. And now you're going to go into a season where you're kind of running it back.
Yeah.
Like you added Saquon Barkley, you added Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, but the rest of the offense is pretty much the same except for a new-look offensive line because you lost your Hall of Fame center.
You're right, and that adds an extra factor to it. But before that collapse even happened, years ago on these airwaves, we've had conversations about, are we comfortable being the favorite? Are we comfortable
I
in the
love
city?
it, but people don't.
And that's what I'm saying. And is that a natural thing for sports fans, or is that a Philadelphia thing? Is it something in the fabric of who we are as a city and as a people that when we become the favorite, we are not comfortable in that situation? Or is that something that's happened recently because of championship losses and collapses? Like, I'm interested in the psychology of why people would not look at this offense and say it's one of the greats.
All right, so if you are on that side, like Connor just said, if you don't like hearing that kind of stuff, explain why. What is the reason? Look inside yourself, right? Lay down on the couch for a little bit, stare in the mirror and talk to yourself and try to figure out exactly why you would have that feeling. Great job, Connor. Great question. You can climb in 610-632-0975. All right, what do we got in the text line, B-Gun? We'll get some texts, get some calls, and then we'll talk about Taiwan Walker.
Yeah, we got Dave and Cape May checking in. And it's kind of hard to interpret this one based on what he says last. I guess it kind of depends on your outlook on the season. But he says this is hands down the best offense ever. Again, like 2022, it's all on Hurts. Will he show up? I think we are in for a big surprise.
Yeah, I mean, look, it always stems or circles the quarterback. It always does, right? If the quarterback stinks, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith are not going to have 1,000 yards. Now, a quarterback can make less talented wide receivers look amazing, right? If the quarterback stinks, then A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith will not have the success that they're having. Now, do you really believe that Jalen Hurts won't have a good season? No. Like, I feel supremely confident that he's going to have a great season. I've said numerous times on the show, I don't believe he'll be as close to perfect as 2022. And I know how it's going to go. Somebody's going to say, "Oh, look, Andrew, his numbers are better. How'd you not see this coming?" There's an eye test thing. His numbers last year were better than 2 years ago, weren't they? Did he throw for more yards last year?
Like
was
the
he better?
overall, the compiling of numbers was better.
Was he better than 2022 last season? Absolutely not, right? 2022, he was damn near perfect. I don't think he'll get to that again. But can he come close to that? Can he still be an MVP candidate? Absolutely he can. And I think he's going to bounce back this season. I think we're going to feel much better about Jalen Hurts. I feel that now. I'm surprised that there are still people that are wondering if we're going to see it.
Also, he doesn't need to be. Like, we've talked about all this stuff with the weapons that he has available. And normally it goes to the pass catchers. And it goes to A.J. and Devontae, and now you're bringing Jahan Dotson. And could Dallas Goedert take that big leap we've been waiting for? And then you talk about the offensive line a little bit. And, I can't wait to bring this guy up with Brendan Gunn on the board because I know how he feels about him. Like, the best running back that Jalen Hurts has had, Miles Sanders in 22, and that was a situation where he had a great year with the numbers, but I don't think anyone's mistaking Miles Sanders for Saquon Barkley.
Right.
Like, what is that? How much easier does that make life to have a premier running back for Jalen Hurts where it's almost, I hate to use the slogan from the big economic collapse, but too big to fail. This team, may be too talented to not.
Well, that's
figure
why
it
I
out.
said the second the Eagles signed Saquon Barkley, that Jalen Hurts has no excuses. This year.
Right.
The second they signed him, I celebrated and then said there's no excuses on these airways midday show when I was hosting at the time. Like, there are none. Because you're right. It's the best running back that he's ever had. He has another year of A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Year 3 now. We talk about 95% new offense. Well, it's still the same 2 wide receivers that you have had supreme success with over the last 2 years. Both of them finishing with at least 1,000 yards. And then if you do want to add in Kellen Moore's input to this offense, Dallas Goedert should have more opportunities this year. Dallas Goedert should have a bigger year this year. He's got a lot to work with. It is almost foolproof. All right, let's go to Andrew in Phoenixville. Then we'll talk about Taiwan Walker. What's up, Drew?
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm absolutely excited for this season. So many weapons. Offensive line is awesome. I have no doubts at all regarding this season going in. I'm not even worried about the collapse last year. I think they've learned from it with Kellen Moore. They're going to change things up and make it a lot more exciting, a lot bigger plays, and NFC won't know what they hit them. And the only thing I'm looking at right now is Cam Jurgens. And I'm not concerned about him at all. I think he's going to do very well in Jason Kelsey's shoes after he retired. The only thing is, how Cam Jurgens is going to be able to read the defense and help the offensive line protect Jalen Hurts the way Jason Kelsey did.
Well,
That's
here's the one thing. Jalen Hurts will have the task of calling out the blitzes, so maybe that makes Cam Jurgens' life a little bit easier going into the season as the replacement to Jason Kelsey. Hopefully Jalen Hurts is good when it comes to that, but that might make Cam Jurgens' life a little bit easier. And here's the deal, Drew, and thanks for the call, man. He was handpicked. Like, Jason Kelsey handpicked Cam Jurgens when he was still in college, right? He wanted this guy. They gave him the opportunity to play right guard last year. They clearly think highly of him. We have seen the Eagles draft future replacements of Jason Kelsey numerous times now, and Isaac Sayamalu and Landon Dickerson. And those guys obviously found homes at the positions that they were playing, and they didn't need to go back to center to continue their NFL career. But they feel comfortable going back to Cam Jurgens. It's not like he played right guard last year and they said, let's try to find a better center in the draft. I think they feel very comfortable with him. I don't think we're going to, and I say this as respectfully as possible to Jason Kelsey, I don't think we're going to completely miss him unless you are like a Brian Baldinger and you do Baldy's breakdowns and you can see the little intricate things about the center position that Jason Kelsey was able to do that Cam Jurgens cannot, or maybe Cam Jurgens doesn't get to the second level as well as Jason Kelsey. We have to remember Jason Kelsey was a freak. We have to remember that Jason Kelsey might go first ballot Hall of Fame, multiple All-Pro nominations for him. Like, we have to realize that there's going to be somewhat of a drop-off. I just don't think it's going to be this drastic drop-off that come week 4, week 5, we're going to be saying, is there a veteran center out there? Or, hey, you do know Jason Kelsey still has his locker there. Maybe he's going to be ready to go. I don't think we're going to have that conversation.
No, and you got to look at recent track record, too, of bringing guys in. Like, you can question still, I think, to some extent, if there's any part of Howie Roseman's ability in roster building that you can question, there are some draft picks that don't seem to make the most. Now it's starting to make more sense, but the evaluation of draft picks has always been kind of a sticky point for Howie Roseman, besides one spot. And that's the offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're not all hits. But the last one I could think of that didn't was who? Andre Dillard, where you actually spent a premium pick.
A first round pick. Yeah, I mean, we'll see about Tyler Steen. Third round pick is still a pretty big deal. But
I mean, it is, but it's also not. Third round picks aren't sure things. They're probable things. My point is, like, look across the line. Jordan Mailata drafted to be here. Cam Jurgens drafted to be here. Landon Dickerson drafted to be here. Lane Johnson drafted to be here. Like, Mekhi Becton is the only one you acquired from outside the organization. And if all those other guys have worked out, it's not that every pick works, but when they anoint a guy, normally they're right.
Yeah, when it comes to the offensive line, absolutely. All right, so we'll continue the Eagles conversation as this show goes on, as you know, but we got to talk about Taiwan Walker. I don't want this to get lost because it happened on Friday and we weren't on the air over the weekend. I know B-Gun was, but this, again, just can't get lost because we weren't on the air Saturday morning or Sunday. I know his last start was on Friday. He cannot pitch again this season. I know I want to go over the top and say I never want to see him in a Phillies uniform ever again. And as you mentioned, he's got 2 years left on his contract after this year. He can't go again this season. And we'll see how next year plays out. We'll see if he's on the roster. But all I know is that velocity is still down. I know Rob Thompson said after the game, I roll my eyes at it. I love Topper. When I hear him say, oh, his velocity looked good, I feel pretty good about it. Like, I know you're trying to do whatever you can to be nice.
Right.
It's okay to say, yeah, stuff's not there right now. We're still working through some things. You don't have to say that you felt good about his velocity because his velocity still wasn't there. It was still barely touching 90s. And it's just batting practice. His last 10 starts, now this goes back to May because he's missed time because of injury, but he's now taken 2 stints on the IL. Over his last 10 starts, he's allowed at least a home run in 8 of them. He has not even come close to pitching any sort of shutout. He's allowed at least 2 earned runs in all of those 10 starts, and in only 2 of those 8, it was only 2. Every other one is 3, it's 4, it's 5, and in this case, this past Friday, it was 6. He's only pitched at least 5 full innings, pitching into the 6th inning just one time in his last 10 starts. A couple 5 2/3, but 6 innings against the Giants back on May 27th. His last 4 starts, 4 innings, 4 2/3, and of course this past outing, 3 innings. He just gives up hits after hits after hits. He doesn't have strikeout stuff. He's walking guys. He's putting guys on base. His whip is like 1.5. Like, it's horrible. This guy, it's at the point where when he goes out there, and I know you guys like to give me win-loss record from last year. They needed to score 5 or 6 runs every time he went out there last season. His ERA was in the 4s last year. It's not like he was an effective pitcher just because he had 10-plus wins last season. His ERA was in the 4s. This year, it is 6.26. You go out there, especially a struggling team like this. Like, I'm amazed that they won Saturday and Sunday. You go out every 5th day with him on the mound, and you score a run. They gave themselves, they tied the game at 1-1,
yes.
And then he goes right back out there and just implodes. If you're a team, it's sometimes hard to not go, oh, geez, he doesn't have it. I don't have it now.
No, it's totally right, and it's not crazy to say the fan base the same thing. Like, I try and look at it. If somebody told me, hey, I got tickets for a Phillies game, great seats. You don't have to pay anything. You can come watch this game. Your favorite baseball team. Okay, who's pitching? Walker's going to be on the mound. After that start in Kansas City, like, I'm not going to that game. I'm sorry.
And that's you as a fan.
Right, like, I'm not going to that game. I don't want to watch him throw again. I can't imagine that the mentality for the team with him, now it's different knowing the person as an individual. You want to believe in guys that you have in that locker room and you spend time with in the clubhouse, but I don't know how you could right now.
Yeah, but dude, like, we've all had, remember the JT Realmuto eye roll?
Yeah, for Jared Hughes.
For Jared Hughes. We have all had that moment, whether you play T-ball or you're in the major leagues, where the guy comes out of the pen or you see the coach waving the pitcher and you're going, why are we doing this?
It was a good run, boys.
We've all had that moment in every sport that we've played, no matter what level it is. You go, really, we're giving this guy another shot? This guy's been horrible. And if you see Taijuan Walker penciled in, you're probably going to go, all right, boys, bat's got to come to life. They scored 4 runs. Like, they didn't play bad on Friday night. The offense actually had a decent day. But when you tie it 1-1, and then all of a sudden you blink and you're down 6-1 in a matter of moments after you just scratched your way back to tie it, you're going to feel a certain way.
Yes, but here, like, what do you do, right? I'm not saying they can't skip a start. He should not make his next start. I feel firmly on that. But the long-term thing gets kind of complicated, not just because of the contract. You have 2 years you got to figure out, but you can't send him down. You could put him on the injured list again, I guess, but you have to come up with something, and who knows how if that does anything. It's not going to help him come out of it because we've seen him already go do that twice this year that hasn't worked. Like, he's not going to throw out of the bullpen.
Well, you know what?
Like,
Screw that. He's not going to throw out of the bullpen. I get it. I'm going to talk about this more coming up next, so we've got to hit a break. You suck, dude. Like, you're terrible. If you want to still be on a major league roster, I'm not asking you to pitch out of the bullpen in a 3-3 ball game in the 6th inning. If it's 11-3 you're winning or 11-3 trailing, I'm sorry, your career has led to you being the mop-up guy. And if you need to just have a roster spot because of the contract, then he's going to the bullpen. And I don't want to hear this guy bitch and moan about how, I can't pitch out of the bullpen. I've never done it before. Who cares, dude? Screw that. You stink. Wow. We'll talk more about it coming up next.
Can't say you're totally wrong.
I am factually correct. We'll talk more about that coming up next. Also, I do have a question about sports fandom and whether or not you care about living in history. It's Kincade and Salciunas. Connor in for John this week right here, 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
The bats come alive over.
On Kincade Salciunas, 97.5, The Fanatic. John out for the week. Next Monday, of course, Labor Day Monday. So we'll be back on Tuesday, the week of the first Eagles game. For week 1 of the NFL. We are so close to the start of the NFL. It starts next Thursday, actually, when the Ravens and Chiefs battle. And then, of course, Eagles-Packers on Friday night. And so we'll continue our fandom discussion, Eagles discussion. When you hear all these positive things, all these great things, do you like hearing that the Eagles offense could be the best in the NFL? Do you like hearing that this Eagles offense could be the best in the history of the franchise? Or do you kind of feel a little icky when you hear that kind of stuff, knowing that you haven't seen them on the field yet, and they still actually have to back it up? Like, I wonder if there are more people, Connor, that are more result-driven than speculation-driven. I gotta see it first.
I imagine that's the majority.
Like, there are people. Joel Embiid is the most talented player I've ever seen wear a Sixers uniform.
I agree.
All right, with his height, his size, what he's able to do on any part of the court offensively, and what he is also able to do defensively, okay? But there are people that go, well, Allen Iverson's a Hall of Famer. Okay, yes, Joel Embiid's career is not done yet. He will be in the Hall of Fame one day.
Yeah.
Like, there are people that like to speculate, and there are also people that are like, well, hold on a second. I got to see how it all plays out first.
Yeah, like we had a caller earlier, Silver, who was calling Jalen Hurts like the best quarterback in Eagles history, and the argument you just made about Embiid and AI, I think, is a good one.
Right.
And, I mean, Embiid has a better resume than Hurts, but the point is, it's just like you have to let these things play out before you compare them, I think. But projecting for a season is different. Like, I'm not talking about these players' careers. I'm not saying Jalen Hurts is going to be the greatest quarterback in franchise history, or that A.J. Brown is going to be like a top 10 wide receiver in the history of football. No, that's not exactly the conversation. It's going into this year, comparing them to other teams that have already played for the Eagles in the past. Is there a chance that the talent level of this team gives you reason to believe they're the best offense in franchise history? I think it's crazy to not want to have that conversation.
Right. And if you don't want to have that conversation, explain to us why. You can text and you can call in 610-632-0975. We'll get back to the text in a second, but just a little bit more on this Taijuan Walker thing. So you said before we went to break that he can't go to the bullpen. And I remember last year during the playoffs, he was not going to pitch out of the bullpen. That's why I thought if they were going to do the piggyback with him and Christopher Sanchez, I thought Walker would have pitched that game for, what was that, game 4?
Yes.
I thought he would have started and gone 2 innings, then Christopher Sanchez gone 2 or 3, and then that gets you to the 5th, and now you have 4 innings to work with out of the bullpen. Instead, they went with the Christopher Sanchez route and then bullpen the rest of the way, and I thought that was mismanaged by Rob Thompson and the Phillies team because that decision was not Rob Thompson's alone. It was also Dave Dombrowski's. Jason Stark has reported that, right? So I call bull. Taijuan Walker is so bad right now and has been all season long. Like, let's not act like, oh, he's just having a bad stretch. He has been bad since the beginning of the season.
Yes.
Taijuan Walker has been so bad that he deserves to be placed into the mop-up role. He deserves it.
Yeah, probably right.
He has not done anything for you to say this guy is deserving for another shot in the rotation, or, hey, let's try to see if we can turn him into a closer like Brett Myers, right? Like, this guy's done nothing to deserve it. He should not be on a major league roster, but I understand the contract and why you would kind of have to keep him on a roster. If you have to keep him on a roster, make him Dylan Covey. Right, make him the guy that's going to only be your long reliever in spots when you're up 10 or down 10. He should not pitch in a meaningful inning the rest of this season. Meaningful inning as a starter, which means first inning of a baseball game. He should not come into the second inning. If you did an opener, he should not come in out of the bullpen as some sort of middle reliever or long reliever unless your starting pitcher, God forbid, gets hurt in the first inning. Like, this guy should not pitch a meaningful inning the rest of this season.
I don't know that I can say yes to that. And part of the reason is you don't have like a great other option. So here's the way I look at it, right? Is Taijuan Walker making his next start? I don't think
he better not.
I don't think anyone's saying yes. I don't think there's a single person in this fan base that would be like, yeah, I want to see him one more time. No. So that discussion point is done. We all want to see him skip his next start. But if you put him in the bullpen, Then you're looking at situations where it's either Colby Allard or it's Tyler Phillips. And Spencer Turnbull's still on the injured list. He's not going to be back until like the end of September.
Right.
I think. So that's not an option. Anyone wondering where he's been. Part of this is, and it's been Rob Thompson's strategy all year, delivering a healthy, well-rested team that's playing well to the postseason. That gets harder to do if you're looking at potentially a short start or a bullpen game every 5 days. And I know Taijuan Walker has not given you like anything more than that. But there's a chance, right? Let's live in this world. He skips his next start against the Atlanta Braves, and then he gets another 4 days before his spot in the rotation comes back up. This division could be over by then. Like, you could be sitting in a spot in early September where you're like, oh, okay, we buried the Braves in that 4-game series. We won a series against the Astros. We can get away with letting him make a start and eat 5 or 6 innings. No, I'm serious, because what I don't want to do is you move Taijuan Walker out of the rotation to the bullpen mop-up role, and then it weighs heavily on the bullpen. And the next thing you know, a part of your team that's going to be really, really important in October has a couple of guys who have been throwing extra innings leading into the postseason.
I get that, but right now, if you take Taijuan Walker out, you do have an option. I'm not saying a great option. Colby Allard is your option to be that 5th starter. I could say that exact same thing about Colby Allard, but at least I'm in ball games.
Yeah,
and you're still fighting for that 1 seed, 2 seed, right? If you want the first round, I don't know what the Phillies want. They've never really said anything. I know they said during the spring training that they want to try to be the best team in the National League and they would love to fight for that 1 seed. I don't know what they truly want. They might see a path where they'd rather continue playing. They might be fearful of what the Braves have gone through the last 2 years, what you saw the Dodgers go through the last 2 years. They may want to try to avoid that first round bye. I don't know. But if you take Taijuan Walker out, you still have options, but at least you have an option where you're competitive. And I'm not saying Colby Allard is going to go out there and pitch 7 strong.
Yeah.
If he gives you 5 innings and keeps it at 3 earned runs, that's better than what Taijuan Walker has been doing for a month.
I got you. I just can also easily see a world where in a week and a half we're having the same conversation about Colby Allard. That's the
but
thing.
Ride the hot hand. Like, Taijuan Walker has not
Which
had
is what I'm saying.
hot hand all season.
I'm saying skip the start, but you said don't give him a competitive inning for the rest of the year. There may come a point where the Philadelphia Phillies, as talented of a team as they are, if they get hot again, there may be a point down the stretch where you're like, oh, we're good. We need to survive this with keeping our guys as healthy and rested as possible. And that's a situation where it may be better to go to a guy that's been stretched out and has thrown long seasons in the past and has been a major league starter that 8 innings. Like, I don't think it's safe to say, like, Taijuan Walker is done pitching for this team forever. But if he makes his next start, I'm going to lose my mind.
So this is what he's done to me. All right? He made me look up free agent pitchers in Major League Baseball.
Oh, no.
Just out of curiosity.
It doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't. But this is what he's done to me. So here's some of your free agent pitchers. Johnny Cueto off the list. He actually just pitched the other day for the Angels.
Yes.
You have Zach Greinke.
Love it.
Who's 90 years old and throws slower than Taijuan Walker. You have Noah Syndergaard.
Hey, bring him back.
I would not. He's cooked. And then you have Vinny Velo.
Oh, my God.
Could you imagine?
The Vince Velasquez World Series.
At least
ring.
that guy throws competitive pitches. Like, Taijuan Walker does not throw a competitive pitch anymore.
No, yeah, you've got Drek in the free agent market. You have no other better option.
No, and I don't want the Phillies to sign Vince Velasquez. But all I'm saying is, like, that guy at least comes in and throws a competitive pitch.
I get why you're at where you're at. What I'm saying is...
He stinks.
No, yes, I understand. We had this conversation before when he was coming back, and you have to evaluate the whole thing of not just... If I had my choice... Like, if I was in charge of the Philadelphia Phillies and we're just in a vacuum, like, I've only watched Taijuan Walker pitch this year. And I don't know the team's record, and I don't know the situation or what month we're in, but I just look at who he is as a pitcher right now. He would not be on my baseball team. But there's more that goes into it than that. So the best you can do right now is say, dude, you're not making your start, and we're going to reevaluate where the team is at in 10 days.
It ain't my money. What do we got in the text line there, B-Gun, about Taijuan Walker?
Taijuan Walker, we got Dawood from the Northeast checking in. He says there's nothing like an overpaid player in this town entering Tobias Harris, James Bradburyville. Nothing would make me more happy than to never see Taijuan Walker ever pitch in this town again,
dude,
unless it's an absolute emergency.
I will say this. I'd rather Tobias Harris pitch for the Phillies right now. Tobias Harris at least got you through the regular season. He may have peed the bed in the playoffs. At least Tobias Harris got you through the regular season. Taijuan Walker can't do that.
It's not the
I
same.
would rather have Tobias Harris back on the Sixers than Taijuan Walker pitching for them.
No, you wouldn't. Stop it. No, you wouldn't. March Andrew is mad at you for that statement.
Yeah, that's true.
Made. No, because it's not a salary cap league. So he doesn't restrict you from signing other players. So those other guys restricted you from making your team better because of what you were paying them. So ultimately, you say not my money, not any money against the cap either. So I'm not worried about that with Taijuan Walker. It's not quite the same thing as that.
All right, real quick, and then coming up next, we'll get into more Eagles discussion and more of your text messages about our fandom discussion that circles the Eagles and all the excitement or all the hype going into the season. I also want people to chime in on this on the text line. You could text the show at 610-632-0975. Another fandom question. This is like a show of fandom. This one's more overall sports. Do you care about sports history when it's outside of Philadelphia? So, like, I talk about Patrick Mahomes. Like, I make a point to watch the Chiefs play football. As long as the Eagles aren't playing at the exact same time, I make a point to watch the Chiefs, just like I made a point to watch the Buccaneers and the Patriots, because as much as I hated Tom Brady going up against the Eagles, he's still the GOAT, right? I make a point to watch the Lakers and LeBron James because it's going to be done soon, right? Patrick Mahomes is the GOAT, and he's in it right now. Shohei Ohtani has over 40 home runs and 40 stolen bases this season. Remember, he's not pitching this year because of his Tommy John surgery. Tommy John surgery hasn't kept him from hitting over 300 with 40 home runs, 40 stolen bases. Aaron Judge, what he is doing in New York, what he and Juan Soto are doing in New York together is historic. And because we hate the Yankees and because Shohei Ohtani is on the Dodgers, who you might face in the National League Championship Series for all we know, I think a lot of people just go, screw that guy. And remember the crazy story earlier this year with the Ohtani gambling thing, with Ipe. I get it. I love living in history, even though it's not a Philadelphia athlete.
Yeah, I'm a screw that guy.
Are
naturally,
you?
But there are some. I pick and choose, right? It depends on how much I like the player. And I acknowledge history, but I don't know. We'll talk about it a little bit more because there's a guy in this city that I was anti for a while.
Interesting.
Because of his greatness.
All right, so we'll get that answer coming up. We'll get to your text messages about the Eagles. But another question about fandom. Do you like when historic seasons are happening for somebody outside of Philadelphia? Like, do you pay attention to it? Because I'm locked in. It's Kincade Salciunas, Connor in for John this week, 97.5 The Fanatic.
Bill Colarulo.
Jalen Hurts didn't think to even talk to Jeff Stout.
747 on Kincade Salciunas, 97.5 The Fanatic.
It's a plane.
Stop that. All right, so we'll get back to the Eagles text in a second, but before the break, I asked the question, and I would like some reaction to this as well from everybody listening, whether or not you enjoy living in history when it comes to sports, despite them not being a Philadelphia athlete, and we're living it right now with Shohei Ohtani. Again, another year. He might get to 50-50, by the way. 40 home runs, 40 stolen bases. He might get to 50-50 club this year. And I love it, but I know there's a lot of people that are like, no, screw that guy. He doesn't play for the Phillies. What do I care? I hope he fails. I love this kind of stuff. Now, you said that there was somebody in this city that you were against?
Yeah, so it's not quite the history thing because he was a younger player at that time. But I was very, very anti-Bryce Harper.
Oh, really?
Yes. And
Why?
it was not just because, like, some people might say, oh, well, he was a division rival, so that makes sense. Like, no, but here's what it was. Because I was a Trout guy. And remember, early on,
like both.
Early on in those guys' careers, though, you were pitted against each other. It was like those OG, you remember the Kobe LeBron conversation where LeBron became what he is?
You could like both.
That was the baseball version of that. I was like, I got to pick a side. Trout's my guy. He's
You don't
from
have
Jersey.
to.
No, but that's the thing. A lot of people do. And I think a lot of people will appreciate history if it's a player that they like. And then if they see it for a player that they don't like for whatever reason, it'll be, I hope that guy fails. So I'll acknowledge history outside of Philadelphia. Like, I'll be excited about it if it's a player I can find myself capable of rooting for.
I still can't believe I literally argued with people last year that Bryson Stott should be included in a trade for Shohei Ohtani. I was told that was too much.
Probably would not have been.
I would like to. I kind of want to find those tweets and just be like, "Hey, do you still feel this way?"
Yo, shoot a tweet at our boy. Old Takes Exposed.
Yeah, I kind of just want to see if people's and that's not even a Stott thing. Stott could be hitting 300 this year, right? He's not 40-40.
No, dude. Like, Ohtani's unbelievable.
Like, I don't know. Like, there are people that were legitimately angry with me for adding Bryson Stott into a potential a mock trade that was made on Fox Sports.
Yeah, like Ohtani's awesome. Judge is awesome. Like, those guys, I love what they're doing. I don't like Ronald Acuna. Part of it's the Braves thing. Last year, his season,
Ronald Acuna,
I was like, I hope he doesn't get to it. Like, I hope he doesn't get to the mark, like, of the steals and homers. Like,
see, I sometimes can really like I like Micah Parsons with the Cowboys.
I do too.
I love Freddie Freeman is one of my favorite baseball players in the league. And when he was with the Atlanta Braves, I said the exact same thing.
Yeah,
like, it's one of those things where it's like, it sucks for me because he plays for the Braves. It sucks for me because that guy plays for the Cowboys. But sometimes you got to admit, you go, man, I would love that guy on my team.
Yes, exactly. Sometimes you do have to. And I do, I recognize and I enjoy witnessing sports greatness. But don't believe for a second that I don't have a little hater in me to the point where if somebody's doing something amazing and I don't like that player, I'm rooting for you to fail. And I don't feel bad saying that at all. And I'd rather see a player I don't like fail than history. But if I like the guy, and I do outside of Philadelphia, yeah, I'll give him some love.
All right, the other fandom question. This was the main one today. Do you like hearing, saying, or even feeling that your team is the best at, the best since, or are you one of these people that would rather be the underdog, that would rather kind of just be under the weeds and, all right, maybe we'll explode on the scene at some point? No, I'm telling you right now, this Eagles offense should be, and it better be, the best offense in the NFC. Plain and simple. And if it's not, I will be disappointed. Look, if they're second, okay. But if they fall to like fourth or fifth in the NFC, I'm not even saying the NFL, in the NFC, you look at the skill positions. I know everybody's Jordan Loved up. The Eagles have better players around Jalen Hurts than what Jordan Love has. I know they have some nice young receivers. The Eagles have more accomplished players, better players right now. And if they're not one of the best offenses, we will be disappointed. Do you like having those conversations, or do you want to see things play out first? What do we have on the text line, B-Gun?
You want Eagles text or do you want history text?
We'll go Eagles text, and then we'll get back to that history conversation as the show goes on.
All right, we got Joe checking in. He says, on paper, this Eagles offense should be the best in history. More should do well with them. Hopefully it doesn't take 3 weeks to click, though, since they did not play in the preseason.
Well,
the patience conversation.
You know how I feel about that. Like, they better come out the gate swinging because of how talented this offense should be, and because all I hear about Kellen Moore and how amazing he is. And I was told that the offense was 95% new, but Nick Sirianni felt comfortable not playing in the preseason, so they just better get off to a good start. That's all. The offense better get off to a good start, or I will have a lot of questions about the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, who I didn't want to return anyway.
Let's win football games.
Okay.
And as long as they do that, I'll give them some leeway.
Yeah.
But they
Tough matchup week one.
And notice, some leeway. I'm not going to say, if you go down to Sao Paulo and you play the Packers and you win 6-0, and the Philadelphia Eagles get 2 field goals from Jake Elliott and somehow, like, I don't know, their defense plays unbelievable or something, I'm going to lose my mind about the offense of this team. There is, like, some leeway does not mean I completely don't care as long as they're winning, because that goes out the window after last year. So, yes, they need to be good, and they need to be good from Jump Street. I'm just not expecting the top offense in the NFC in week 1.
All right, give us one more text there, B-Gun.
We got Kenny in California checking in. All of this preseason hype for the Eagles is reminding me of another team in this division, and I hate to hear it, the Dallas Cowboys.
So, because of the hype that the Cowboys get every single year.
Yeah, but I don't know.
But here's the deal. Here's one major difference. I have seen this team get to the Super Bowl.
Right.
The Cowboys haven't since the 90s. Right? So, like, this Eagles team, and I'm not saying, oh, the last time we've been this hyped up about an Eagles team was when they won the Super Bowl in 2017. No, this team, this roster, at least on offense, very much of it is the same. Probably 7 guys, right? Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson. That's 6 alone from the Super Bowl team 2 years ago. And then obviously Saquon's an addition. Cam Jurgens, a new starter. Landon Dickerson was on the Super Bowl team.
Yeah, he was a
rookie. Yeah, so
on that
7. There's 7 guys returning. 7 of the 11 starters from the Super Bowl team are still playing this year.
Not only that, there are 3 guys still on this roster that were on the 17 Super Bowl team. Right. Lane Johnson, Brandon Graham, and Jake Elliott are still here. Like, there are barely 3 people alive from the last time the Cowboys
Don't
won a
forget
Super Bowl.
Rick Lovato.
Rick Lovato,
Four
yeah.
people. Put some respect on his name.
I'm sorry, Rick.
But
Rick.
to that point, like, I get it. You're worried because the Cowboys always get hyped up. 7 of the 11 starters on offense were starters in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. They can still do it. All right, coming up next, we reset the entire show. We have today's headlines with Brendan Gunn at 8:05. And I want to dive a little bit deeper into this because we are having this conversation of whether or not you like hearing that the Eagles could be the best at this, best at that. Let's really dive into it. Where are the Eagles actually best at in certain positions in the history of the franchise or in the NFC right now? It's Kincade and Salciunas. Connor in for John this week, 97.5 The Fanatic. One on Kincade and Salciunas, 97.5 The Fanatic. Connor Thomas in for John this week. Brendan Gunn in for Connor, or in Connor's seat, which is why today's headlines will be led by B. Gunn coming up at 8:05. At 8:10, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into just how great this Eagles offense can be on paper. Can they be the best in Eagles franchise history? Can they be the best in certain areas of the NFL this year? And our question today, based off of fandom, is whether or not you like hearing that kind of stuff. Or do you try to keep yourself grounded? Do you yourself try to not allow yourself to go over the top? Or when you hear somebody else, like if you hear us talking on this show, man, we think this Eagles offense might be the best in the franchise's history. Do you feel a certain type of way about it? We'd love to get more of your responses on that at 610-632-0975. Our other two things that we've dove into. Another one is another fandom question. Shohei Ohtani is having a historic season in Major League Baseball, 40 home runs, 40 stolen bases, and he could very well get to 50-50. And my question is whether or not you like living in history when it comes to sports, when these players are not Philadelphia athletes. Now, Connor admitted that he rooted against Bryce Harper because he was a Mike Trout guy. I am okay with rooting for both, saying, hey, I think both of them are tremendous. I don't do the LeBron versus Michael Jordan debate. You know why? I wasn't around for Michael Jordan, and it's okay to say that they're both very, very good, even though you're straight up LeBron's the best, and there's no argument. I like it when there is history going on. You know why? Because I don't just watch Philadelphia teams. Like, I watch baseball when the Phillies aren't playing. I watch football when the Eagles aren't playing. Same with hockey. Same with basketball. I watch other teams play because I think it also gives me more of an educational approach when it comes to evaluating my teams versus other teams. Like, I can say, like last year, the Eagles were 10-1, and it was ugly. So was the rest of the league, which is why at first I wasn't necessarily concerned. Remember, when they were ugly at 10-1, the 49ers had 3 straight losses at one point. The Chiefs weren't looking good. Like, I think it's better for your fandom to know what else is going on around the major leagues, the other sports. But when it comes to success, do you like it or do you not? So what do we have on that? I know a couple of texts are coming in there. Do you appreciate living in history like we are right now with Shohei Ohtani?
Yeah, we got Mike in Turnersville checking in, and he says he appreciates history, but take a look at the NL MVP race right now. You got Shohei Ohtani, and then you got Marcell Ozuna chasing the Triple Crown. I'm not going to root for either of those guys because they have off-the-field issues, and that plays a big part of it.
Well, now, hold on. First of all, yes, Marcell Ozuna does. I know the whole Ohtani situation was fun. We don't really know if he actually has off-the-field issues or not.
Also, like, let's say he does.
It's totally different.
That does not compare to me with what Marcell Ozuna is.
Yeah, no, Marcell Ozuna is a horrible human being. He's a creep. Whatever.
Yeah, Shohei Ohtani like the Chiefs plus 7.5.
Right, exactly.
I don't think those things are comparable.
So did I, you know? We shouldn't compare the two, but we also don't really know if Ohtani had off-the-field issues. And if he did, I don't know. Is his so egregious that I would root against him? The guy's still balling out. Like, it's not. Look, this whole situation clearly did not affect him.
That would be funnier to me than it would be something that makes me angry.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I would joke about it more than anything. Marcell Ozuna's situation.
You're not joking around about that.
Totally
different. Horrible. So we'll dive into that some more, and also, of course, the Phillies are always on the table after they're 2 of 3 against the Royals. And Taijuan Walker should never pitch again this season. But it is time now for today's headlines with Brendan Gunn.
Today's headlines with Connor Thomas.
What up, B Gunn?
Yo, what's going on, guys? So
what do we got?
Over the weekend, I don't know if you guys saw it. I'm sure you did. There was a football team, the Los Angeles Chargers, traveling down to Dallas. They were just hanging out in their hotel room. 15 players decided to get on their elevator. And then they got stuck somewhere between the 3rd and the 15th floor. I don't know how you can't identify that, but it was 15 of them in there for 2 hours. And then they got out. They all had their shirts off. They were sweaty, Jim Harbaugh goes, and Justin Herbert came out like a true leader. Didn't have a drop of sweat on him. He was cool, calm, and collected. So somehow they try to spin that. But I have a question for you. Based on the Taiwan Walker thing, if you were stuck in an elevator with a team for 2 hours, who's the one player you do not want in that elevator?
Does it have to be Philadelphia?
No, it can be anywhere.
Because I would never want to be stuck in an elevator with Von Miller.
What do you mean?
You remember it? He has a gas issue.
Oh, does he?
Yes.
No,
where
I
he
didn't know
farts
that. I knew he
all-
had chickens.
No, he farts all the time.
Oh.
Remember he did Dancing with the Stars and literally his partner had to like ask him to stop and he said it's a medical condition. Like I would not want to be in an elevator with Von Miller.
Guess what, Vaughn? I can't smell. I'm cool with
Yeah,
you,
you'd
baby.
be fine. Yeah.
Talk some edge lineman work. Yeah, we'll be good.
Have you ever been stuck on an elevator?
No, that'd be scary as hell.
It happened one time to me.
Oh, you got stuck?
It was probably the best timing. It was coming back from a party. It was a Thursday night at Temple. And it was at the dorm room, and we were all wasted, and like we ended up having fun while we were stuck on the elevator. If I was sober, I probably would have freaked out. But I will say,
you're an claustrophobic guy.
when they opened the elevator and they started, we had to climb out, or they were pulling us out. I was thinking of, oh man, if this drops, I'm split. I'm done.
Yeah.
If this drops while I am getting through,
What floor was it on? Did you ever find out?
Seventh floor. Oh, it was right before we got to our 7th floor destination.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And by the way, the Harbaugh quotes were weird.
Yeah, super weird.
He said, I wish I was in there with them. Like
I kind of love it though.
you want to talk about rooting for people to fail? I hope he fails, even though I know he won't.
That's the
because
thing.
he's good.
I like that type of stuff because I think he's genuinely crazy, and the fact that he believes that. I would go size guy, and I would go probably like Vince Wilfork or something like that.
Yeah, 'cause you
Someone's
don't
just
want him
gonna
taking up too
a
much
lot of
room.
Might
space.
have snacks, though. You might need them. Might have. Vince
might have
Wil-
Do you
snacks.
think he
looks
just walks around with snacks?
Yes, I've just seen Vince Wilfork. He's
that
probably
what-
got like a baby back rib.
All due
tape on his
respect,
back.
I could call him a fat guy, right?
Yes, you can call him a
'cause,
fat man.
Like
Yes.
objectively fat. Do fat people just walk around with snacks?
You ever seen
you strapped?
heavyweights? They hide it in the beds.
Bro, I
They
saw
hide it in their
a dude at
pillowcase.
the Eagles preseason game that had just like Funyuns in his pocket, like
Yeah.
the full bag in the cargo shorts
You
pocket.
gotta not let those sugar levels
He's
get
a
low.
large
You know
man.
what I mean?
Okay, fair
All
enough.
right, what's next?
All right, so apparently there was a game yesterday. I wouldn't know until I was trying to watch my 6 o'clock nightly news, and just to get depressed. And I got even more depressed because the Little League World Series was on. I'm just kidding,
It
guys.
was amazing.
Yesterday, final bunt. There was guy didn't cover first base. I'm going to play the final call for all the people that did not hear it. It was a good one.
Well, they bunt Alexander with the runner at second base, Norton. He gets it down. Oh, it's perfect. They throw it away. Right there, he's going to win the Little League World Series championship.
Yeah,
It was amazing, dude. Like, that was electric. That entire game, they're down 1-0 going into the last inning, 2 outs, and they tie it. The pitcher cuts off the throw home. Would have been a bang-bang play at the plate. These kids are 12 years old, living maybe the best moments of their sporting lives.
Well, what about
and
the other
people
side?
like you and John Kincade and Tom Alvord are anti-youth happiness and youth sports. And you know what? Yeah, the other side, they lost. It's a great learning experience for them, and they got further than so many other kids did.
you're not first or last, but that Chinese
That's not
Taipei-
true. You could be third, fourth, hell, you could even be fifth.
That Chinese Taipei was the 9th time that team has made it. That Little League has made it to the World Series championship game. They're 0-9, so they're going home sad
No.
every time.
No,
or
they-
Chinese Taipei is the
The
country.
Florida team
Oh, it was the
was
Florida team.
0-8,
Okay, that's who it was.
but then they won. Yeah, so that was their first win.
Dude, like, could you imagine walking back into the first day of 6th grade after walking off
That's
the
what
Little
I'm
League World
saying.
Series?
Like,
Like, that's got to be the greatest day of that kid's
yeah,
life.
and then little Johnny, who's 9th in the lineup, never grows an inch again, can't play on 90-foot bases. And
That's
his life
the point.
Is ruined.
That's
his
the
life
point,
may have been
Brendan.
the best
No,
moment
it's
of his
not.
life.
Your life's not ruined. It's a great.
Like, dude, it's
So dumb.
great. And it's just the purity of the sport. There's, I get it.
Small
They're
ball.
on TV and like some other stuff. Like John, the coaches try to take the moment when they're mic'd up. They're not getting paid. These guys are all volunteers. Like, it's amazing what they do.
I will say, I wish it did not end on a bunt with an error. But that being said,
It's
still a
electric.
great moment.
And by the way, Chinese Taipei is like perfect in the field,
Yeah, the
except for that one
fundamentals,
play.
and then just
Couldn't get it done.
maybe
I was locked in that. The second the Phillies game came to an end, I was locked.
They were in the
in.
6th inning as soon as that game, like the Phillies game ended. So you saw the comeback tie and then the extras.
Phillies ended. I put on NCAA 25. I got Chunas' tweet at me. Put that game on, saw a bunt, turned it off, and I was just like, I can't do this. I can't do it.
You're the worst. I can't believe you don't like it that much. All right, what's next?
All right, main topic of today's show. I'll let the people hear it out there talking about the Eagles and the expectations, and do they like hearing all the great things about this Eagles offense?
Do you like hearing that this player is the best at or the best since? Do you like hearing that this team could be the best in the conference, the best in the division? They're a surefire lock. Do you like hearing that kind of stuff, or do you try to keep yourself grounded and hesitate from getting overly excited?
I can't ground myself with this offense. I'm kind of there with Bill Colarulo. Like, I do think this is the best Eagles offense of all time, and I don't think there's another one that kind of comes to mind outside of 2022. 2004 Eagles, they had Terrell Owens and young Brian Westbrook and McNabb, and then they had Chad Lewis, L.J. Smith.
They also had a ridiculously good offensive line.
That's fair when you
they had Trey
account that
Thomas
into
and
it.
John Runyon on the tackle.
But I almost take an adequate offensive line and the weapons the Eagles have over that dominant offensive line. Maybe I'm wrong because it was the dominant offensive line in 2017. But I'm not here in the preseason. I'm not going to temper my expectations and say,
well, no, you
maybe.
shouldn't temper your expectations. I'm just wondering if people feel a certain type of way. So you're basically saying, like, oh, yeah, it's a stone cold lock. They haven't played a snap yet. And so
Fair.
I'm with you. I can project. I can speculate. I can look ahead and go, man, I don't see how this offense gets stopped. But the scheme could be horrible. We don't know. Like, what if the scheme
But
is
is
terrible?
that not because the players were good enough, or is it because I can't see A.J. Brown not having a season, Saquon Barkley? Like, they're all going to put up their numbers. If things go wrong, it's not because they weren't good enough. It's because something went drastically wrong with the head coach, the offensive coordinator, something like that. Like, I can't see the offense.
Here's the problem. It's very, like, again, we're talking strictly on paper, and it's basically Madden. Like, if you were to ask me, which Eagles offense would you want to play in any franchise history on Madden today, it would be this offense.
Easily.
Right? Like, I would like to, if you could create an offense, I would like to play this one.
I might go Michael Vick just because
With LaShawn and Deshaun. Yeah, I got you.
But the point stands. We're just thinking about on paper, like how talented this team should be. That's the conversation, not how talented they're going to be.
But I know that there are people that feel a certain type of way when we have that conversation. People felt that way when we were talking about the Phillies in July, when they weren't losing at all, right? Like, they were winning series after series after series. There were people during that conversation that were saying, whoa, you guys are getting a little ahead of yourself. They got to win something first. They got to do that. They got to do this. They got to keep this up. They have to beat real teams, even though they just swept the Dodgers when we had that conversation. They were saying that about that Phillies team then, back in July. I can't imagine those same people are thinking differently about the Eagles.
No, but some people are dreamers and some people aren't. And there's no right side of that conversation to be on. It's part of a life philosophy, and I think it extends to sports. Are you the type of person that likes to live in the now and evaluate things as they happen? Or are you the type of person that likes to look forward to what things could be? And again, there's no right side or wrong side to that. I don't know if it's a generational gap that decides that. I don't know if it's your personality, just who you are as an individual. But those people who don't want to dream past what they know right now to be sure are not going to see it that way.
Right. I wonder if the people who are the wake me up when are the ones that won't speculate that they're going to be really good.
Yes. I'd imagine that's like the Venn diagram for those two groups is almost a perfect circle.
Like, I can say right now, and I've said this like 3 or 4 different times because there's been many iterations of it, this Sixers roster is probably the best one with Joel Embiid, right? An older Tyrese Maxey, a more experienced Tyrese Maxey. Paul George is the best wing that Joel Embiid, that is a fact, best wing player that Joel Embiid has ever played with, even more so than probably Jimmy Butler with everything that Paul George can do.
Yeah, probably.
This is probably the best team that Joel Embiid has ever played with. And I guarantee you, me saying that, there's somebody driving in the car right now saying, well, what does it matter? Wake me up when? Right? There are probably people that say that they don't want to even give credit to a roster construction because they want to see it play out first. And that's what a lot of people were saying about the Phillies. When we had this conversation back in July that this is the best Phillies team ever or could be the best Phillies team ever, there were people that were saying, hold on, they got to do it in the playoffs first. And I wonder if that kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah, but that's stupid because you have to be able to look at each individual situation as different. Like, people have their...
Yeah, there are people that don't like living in the regular season.
I understand. You have your default things that it's like, as a person, I like to stay where I'm at right now, and we'll get to that point when we get to it. But when you looked at what happened with the Phillies, when we were having that conversation, we'd already seen them do it. And they largely had the same team that went to the World Series and went to the NLCS. Like, this Eagles team is coming off of a collapse. And to take it even further, this Sixers team, because you just brought up the Embiid, and is that the best team he's had? They're coming off of, 8 collapses. So...
Yes.
You have to be able to... I'm not going to walk into that saying, well, I'm confident about this with the Sixers, or I'm confident the same way with the Eagles as we were when the Phillies had already played half of their schedule. So there is wiggle room, I think, inside the philosophy that you use.
All right, so let's expand on this a little bit, and we'll talk about this more around 8:30 as well. But the reason why we're even having this conversation is because there is merit to it, right? Like, me asking the question, do you like hearing that this Eagles offense could be the greatest in franchise history? Could it be the best in the NFC? We're having this conversation because there's merit to it. I'm not having this conversation, with Kevin Cobb as the starting quarterback, right? Like, I'm having this conversation with a quarterback that was the runner-up for MVP 2 years ago, should have won the MVP 2 years ago, and outdueled Patrick Mahomes in a Super Bowl that, unfortunately, the Eagles lost in. But he was the better quarterback in that specific game. I'm talking about a wide receiver duo that is already the best in Eagles franchise history in A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. I'm talking about a tight end that has been, I believe, underutilized in his career so far in Philadelphia and has a chance to explode this year and be well-known across the National Football League. This offensive line might take a little bit of a hit without Jason Kelce, but they still have one of the higher-paid left guards, and they have a great Hall of Fame right tackle in Lane Johnson and a left tackle that graded out well last year. I saw some things that I didn't necessarily love out of Jordan Mailata last year, but I don't think he stinks. I think he can get back to where he was 2 seasons ago. There's merit to the conversation. And so I want to expand on this as the show continues. Like, let's really focus on this, and we can compare it to the league. We can compare it to Eagles franchise history, however you want to compare it. Is it out of line to say some of these things? I don't think that it is.
No, I can't realistically say. Now, here's what I will say. Like, my gut feeling on ceilings for players is that the Eagles are in a good spot with individuals. But just kind of the way the sports work. There's no concrete reasoning to this at all. Like, if Jalen Hurts has a good season, that says nothing. Like, in a vacuum, I know the quarterback position affects the running back position, but like, a player having a great season does not affect another player's ability to have a great season besides the way that those positions interact. But I do feel like when you have talented teams like this, it's rare to see all those guys hit their ceiling. Like, you think about the Phillies. Like, Bryce Harper can hit a home run even if Trey Turner hit a home run before him.
Right.
But it's rare that you see guys have career years like all together and stuff like that.
You saw that last year with the Braves, and then you saw them not this year, even before they got hurt.
Like, and what did it turn them into? One of the greatest offensive teams in the history of the sport. Like, if it happens, awesome. But the rarity of, like, well, Saquon's going to be amazing, and Hurts is going to be amazing, and AJ and Devontae are going to be amazing, and the offensive line's going to be amazing. It does always seem that there's like one or two of those factors that you do have question marks about at some point.
All right, so I'll then ask this, and this could be our next conversation that we dive into, and I'd love to get your reaction on the phone line and the text line, 610-632-0975. When you hear all those things, Jalen Hurts, if this continues, could be the best quarterback in Eagles franchise history. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith are already the best wide receiver duo. Dallas Goedert could go down as one of the best tight ends in Eagles franchise history. Saquon Barkley could be the best running back to ever wear an Eagles jersey. That doesn't mean best in Eagles franchise history because other guys have done more during their tenure in Philadelphia, like a guy like LaShawn McCoy. You hear all that kind of stuff, and there's merit to all of it, right? Like, I don't think you can deny any of the things I just said. My question is, does that mean anything to you? Because if it doesn't amount to a Super Bowl victory, does it mean anything? Let's dive into that coming up next. You can climb in 610-632-0975. You can text in. You can call in. I want to get your reaction on all the other topics that we've had so far today. And, oh, by the way, B-Gun, drop the ball in today's headlines.
What'd I miss?
How is there no mention of Ted Lasso Season 4?
Wait, what?
You didn't see this?
No.
Whoa, where were you yesterday?
I was golfing.
For 15 hours?
I played a little spike ball after.
Ted Lasso Season 4. It has been confirmed that they are going to write a Season 4.
Hell yeah, baby. Nick Sirianni stars.
After saying that they were done, they're going to make a Season 4. I can't believe you didn't know that.
No clue.
There's probably somebody driving right now that had no idea. Yes, there will be a Ted Lasso Season 4 on Apple TV. And the cast is coming back. Dude, come on, man. All right, we'll continue all of our discussion coming up next. It's Kincade and Salciunas. Connor and for John this week right here, 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
The bat gets hot in Kansas City. I'm Brendan Gunn, and this update is brought to you by the Hartford Small Business Insurance.
On this Monday morning here on 97.5 The Fanatic. It is indeed Kincade and Salciunas. John out for the week. He is down in the Jersey Shore for the week, which is awesome. Connor is in his chair this week. Brendan Gunn producing the show all week long. All right, we'll get back to this does it matter conversation in a few minutes. Doesn't mean anything when you hear about how this Eagles offense could be the best all time or in the NFC. Does it mean anything to you? Because does it ultimately mean anything going into a season when you have seen other teams have the best at this, best at that, and not win? Well, let's check the text line based off of what we've already talked about. Our opening topic today was whether or not you like hearing all that kind of stuff about how great the teams are, or do you like to try to stay under the weeds and not get overly excited because you've seen some issues in Philadelphia over the last couple of years? Do you like living in history? We are doing that with Shohei Ohtani right now, but I think there are people that don't care when it's not somebody in Philadelphia. And if you just want to vent about Taijuan Walker and you want to come on my side, which I think a lot of people already are, not wanting to see him pitch again the rest of the season, feel free to have at it. You can text it, you can call in 610-632-0975.
Man, you just went my side on the Taijuan Walker thing. I don't think this is like, you remember when you were on Rojas Island at the station at the start of the season?
Yeah.
I think this is the opposite, bro. Your Taijuan Walker Island is like calling North America. It's calling North America an island. It's a continent,
you're right,
bro. Everybody's got to be there. If you are not related to or Taijuan Walker himself, and you want him to make this next start for the Philadelphia Phillies, like, what are we doing?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no reason for that guy to be on the mound anymore. Absolutely none. All right, what do we have on the text line, B-Gun?
Yeah, we got Anthony in St. Pete checking in. He says, I will never anoint an offense on paper until I see them play. Season revolves around Jalen and the offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore. As a side note, Sirianni started on a bad foot by not playing his team on offense one snap. I expect a sloppy game one.
So, you know what's funny? I always get the pushback of playing in the preseason. Now, all of a sudden, we're getting close to the regular season. I think people are getting nervous. Now, all of a sudden, as we get closer, you know the butterflies that you feel. But then come the end of the week, you feel good. Like every Friday before an Eagles game, the Eagles are going to win. Right? Every Friday.
Yeah.
But Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday leading up, you're nervous. I think people are starting to do that. I think come Friday, week 1, next Friday, people are going to be all on board, all fired up. But I think you're starting to hear more and more whispers about the preseason thing. Now, here's the deal. I can't blame anyone. I mean, welcome to the right side. But I can't blame anyone for saying it when the head coach himself said it last year. Like Nick Sirianni himself, after the Patriots game, said if he were to reevaluate the situation, he would have played the guys in the preseason. And then we talked about how this training camp was going to be far different, how it was going to be more old school, in quotes.
Right.
But when it came to the preseason games, it was not old school for the offense. It was for the defense, though.
Well, here's a way to look at it. I don't know if you buy this or not, so you can tell me, but I'm going to try and take a different spin on that. Nick Sirianni felt after the first game against the Patriots last year that his team could have benefited from playing in the preseason. And I imagine part of that was, man, I wish I knew that we were going to have some of these problems with my new coordinator schemes before we stepped on the field in actual football that matters. So
could there be a chance that even though Kellen Moore is a far more experienced and successful offensive coordinator than Brian Johnson, and same with Vic Fangio over Sean Desai, now take the defense out of it because they actually did play, couldn't that exact same thing happen?
It absolutely could. And that's why I think we're good. Because Nick Sirianni said that last year. And he remembered that. And he chose not to do it. So for him to say something and then choose to do the opposite means you're pretty confident that you're not walking into the same situation.
Okay. And look, he did talk about that. We'll play it later on in the show. He did talk about why he feels comfortable not playing guys in the preseason. And I'll hear him out, but you just know what I've been saying. And I told you could smack me in the face if I say it again.
I get you keep telling me that. I don't know if it's a trap.
But all I know is you better not have only scored three points in the first half.
Easy.
Better not only score 3 points.
They'll be fine.
That's all. All right, let's go to Q in Center City. What up, Q? Q.
Dude, how you guys
What's up, man?
Ain't much. Listen, I was listening to what you guys were talking about. And with the Eagles, I think everybody might have a career year for our offense to be potent. If Jalen's having a really good year, then I think we're going to be okay. It's going to be a potent offense. It all hinges on him. Everybody don't have to be like hitting the cylinder, having these career years, despite what it looks like on paper. And the whole thing about, to wait until it's championship time and do it really matter? I mean, in this city, for a guy like myself, I'm 49, and I've seen a lot of losing. And if we look at our history, we don't got a lot of championships from these franchises. So it's cool. We got great defenses back and we can talk about these great offense but we don't got the championships to back it up. So excuse me if I'm one of those who, it's all good, but what it's going to do is we getting a championship out of it.
So let me ask you something. Like, I'll use the 2011 Phillies for an example, right? They won 102 games. They had Roy Halladay. They had Cliff Lee. They had Roy Oswalt. They had Cole Hamels. They had that ridiculous offense with Chase Utley and Ryan Howard and Jimmy Rollins and Hunter Pence and Carlos Ruiz, right? But they lost in the first round of the playoffs. Do you look back at them with disgust because they didn't do anything in the playoffs?
It's part of the disappointment, yes. It goes into that whole thing when we talk about our sports and our history.
Right, and look, and it's fair to feel that way, Q, and we appreciate the call, man. And that's why, I think there's different personalities will have different answers when it comes to this question. And when you hear all these great things about the offense, you just heard Q say, if Jalen Hurts plays well, they're all going to have career years, right? But if they all have career years and they lose in the second round of the playoffs, let's say they have the first round bye, but then they choke away the divisional round of the playoffs at Lincoln Financial Field. Everybody having a career year, people will go, oh, what do I care? They didn't win anything. I look back at 2011. Now, at the time when they lost to the Cardinals, I was freaking miserable.
Yeah, we're talking like looking way back, not in the moment.
It's 13 years. That's why when we had the conversation back in July about whether or not this is the best Phillies team ever, I said it could be, but I wasn't ready to go there yet because I lived through 2011, and 2011 didn't even win the World Series. The 2011 Phillies were better than the 2008 Phillies. I can say that comfortably. Like, I can comfortably say that the 2011 Phillies was the best team during that stretch of 7 to 11.
And they're in the argument for best Phillies team of all time. Like, when you just look at the talent level of that team.
And they lost in the first round of the playoffs. But I still feel comfortable saying that, whereas I think there are some people that go, how can you be the best if you didn't win anything?
Right.
So the Eagles could have a historic season offensively and not win a Super Bowl, and then people will say that the 2017 Eagles were better. This offense on paper, they haven't played it down. This offense on paper is better than the 2017 Philadelphia Eagles offense.
Yes. But
there's no, you cannot even make an argument that if you were to put the two head-to-head, if they played a one-on-one game in Madden, I would take the 2024 Eagles over the 2017 Eagles in a freaking heartbeat.
Easily.
But that team won a Super Bowl.
They did, and that's why it's tough, and part of it is luck. It's not just all talent.
Yeah.
This is the whole point that makes sports interesting. And Q's point, our last caller there, about, if they do all this and they don't win something, what does it matter? That's a valid point. It is. And at the end of the day, it's about winning championships. We're not at the end of the day. Our alarms just went off at 4 a.m. to wake up for the show on the Eagles season. And there's a long way to go before we get to that point and have those conversations. I will never. It's not who I am as a person. It's not who I am as a sports fan. And it's not who I think sports fans should be. I will never look at a team that I could validly evaluate and say they are talented, they match up well with other teams, they have this guy. If you can rationally convince yourself that a team is talented enough to be in a championship contention type of group in their sport, I am always going to go into that season believing they can do it.
Right. But there are some people that will go, I got to see it first. And
that's crazy.
It's not, though.
It is to me.
It's not. Look, I am more with you. But to me, over the last 6 years, the 76ers were championship contenders. But until they do it, and now because it's been 6-7 seasons of it, there are people that are going to think their identity is just a overhyped team every single year. How many times have you heard them compared to the Cowboys at this point?
I got you, but what good does it do? What good does it do to look at a team that's talented, that on paper
because
has everything?
There's people that would rather be surprised, and it's the underdog thing. That's what it comes down to. There is somebody out there right now that goes, I'm going to go into the Sixers season with really bad vibe. I'm going to go into this Eagles season expecting the worst, and if it goes well, then, I was pleasantly surprised. But if it doesn't, I won't be heartbroken because I already expected that. Well, there's people that live life that way.
Guess what? Those people are lying to themselves to some extent because when the collapse happens,
they'll be the first one to complain.
They're going to be upset. It's going to bother them emotionally. I look at this with the Phillies season. There have been some people in this fan base, one of them that sits in this chair a lot of the time, that have been losing their mind for about 2 months at this point.
Yes.
Just completely getting upset about this, that, the other thing. I'm not saying those people are wrong. But at the end of the day, if the Philadelphia Phillies go out in the wild card round or the divisional round, they come up short of the World Series, we're all going to be heartbroken. But I'm going to have gotten more enjoyment out of this season because I looked at what this team could be and the talent level and the wins that they did get and believed in that.
Right. Well, it was more enjoyable when the wins were happening.
No, exactly.
The last 2 months have not been enjoyable baseball for the Phillies.
Yeah, but I'm not saying the last 2 months. The point is protecting yourself from the expectations is making yourself enjoy the season less.
Yeah, I mean, the people before this collapse, however you want to term it, before this stretch happened, a long stretch, there were people that were not actively enjoying the Phillies season. Exactly. And that was sad. And then this stretch happened, and people would then say, this is why I wasn't enjoying it, because I knew this would happen, even though there's no way you knew that it would be this bad. By the way, real quick NFL note for all you fantasy football players out there. Nick Chubb going to start the season on the PUP list, so that means he's guaranteed to miss the first 4 weeks.
Interesting.
Just letting you guys know.
I took Jerome Ford in Dynasty last night.
Fantasy football drafts I know are happening
GMs.
these next 2 weeks. All right, coming up next, we get more of your text reaction to today's topics. It is Kincade and Salciunas. Big 9 o'clock hour ahead still as well. We'll explain to you what's coming up then. It is Kincade and Salciunas. Connor in for John this week, 97.5 The Fanatic.
Now, A Birds Insider Update on 97.5.
Our man Alfie from Abington has checked in. I mentioned right before the break that Nick Chubb is starting the season on the PUP list. So he'll be out for at least the first 4 weeks. Remember, he sustained another nasty injury. That guy just had what we talk about Joel Embiid. Nick Chubb has had a pretty bad stretch of luck with injuries himself.
Bro, I'd take Embiid over Chubb, honestly. Like the contact injuries that you get playing football.
Oh, yeah. But our man Alfie tweets in, he must be in a league with 4 teams. He said, Chubb being on the PUP list is fantastic. I picked him up in the final rounds. I have Christian McCaffrey, David Montgomery, Jonathan Taylor, and Brian Robinson. Or it might be Bijan Robinson for all. He just put B-Rob. So, like, who?
I've heard about these leagues. It's one live person and 19 potatoes. Like, who's playing
in your
fantasy
league?
football game?
Oh, Haley's in that league.
Wow. Now, what I will say is I did kind of crush the Fanatic Work League. So we have some people in this building that are not immune to that. But yeah.
Did you guys have the draft?
No, not yet.
Okay, I opted out this year.
It's okay. You had it in your contract. You had the opt-out.
I opted out of the it's just a little too much for me.
It's all good.
I don't want to draft defensive players, 8 quarterbacks, and yeah.
Hey, buddy. It's all good.
I opted out. It's just not for me.
I'm going to win anyway, just like I did last year. So
look, I'm rooting for you. You know, this is Kincade Salciunas. You're the honorary member. B-Gun in the league. You guys are both in the league. Haley's in the league. Oh, geez. There's a lot of people to root for. All right, what do we got in the text line, B-Gun, on our topics today? You can text in. You can call in 610-632-0975. And by the way, coming up in the 9 o'clock hour, we'll obviously continue our discussion. But Dave Zangaro put together his 53-man roster prediction, and I don't think there's a single thing that you can disagree with. We'll get into that more in the 9 o'clock hour. But what do we have in the text line?
Yeah, we got Joe P. checking in. He says, when you're comparing teams, it's a matter of talent and success. The 2011 Phillies were a better team talent-wise than the 2008 team. However, the Phillies in 2008 were more successful. That's how you distinguish between great teams and teams who won it all.
Yeah, but it's okay. So then I can say that about every team that's ever won a championship, that they're better than every other team. Like, I know this is going to sound horrible or sound hot takey. The team that wins the championship every year is not necessarily always the best team.
No, it's. I hesitate to say.
Like the Diamondbacks and Rangers were not the best teams in baseball last year.
Dude, like my gut feeling is more often than not, it's not the best team. Like,
I don't think you're crazy. Like,
no, because to think about it this way, right? To be the best team in any of these major sports, you have to have so much go right over a tough regular season. And then on top of all of that stuff going right, you have to have it go right when it counts most. This isn't like that golf tournament they play at the end of the year. Like when they play the whatever championship, the FedEx playoff.
Yeah.
You start, like if you've won this many tournaments, you might start like 10 strokes ahead of somebody else.
Right.
That's not how this works. You have to play the game even playing field, even if you are the best team. And if you've had that much luck and success, there's probably a solid chance it's not going to continue.
Right. So that's why, like, I understand what that person's texting, but I don't necessarily have to evaluate it that way. That might be how they evaluate. And you can evaluate it any way you can. Like, there are people, John and I argue all the time, Joel Embiid's greatness. Well, what has he won? Nothing. He has won nothing, right? But does that mean he's not as good as Big Shot Bob? Because Robert Horry won 6 championships? Like,
right.
That's the thing. Like, it's hard to evaluate just based off of who won a championship and who didn't win a championship. And so the 2011 Phillies, like if I were to do my power rankings of the greatest Phillies teams of all time, dude, 2008 might not even be 1 or 2, right? Like that pitching staff sucked. With all due respect to my man, Jamie Moyer, #1 Jamie Moyer fan in this city, he had the most wins on that roster in that season.
Championships are like talent tiebreakers. It's like if you have 2 similar teams or 2 similar players,
which one won,
and like
which
one dude's got a ring and one guy doesn't, that's where you say it. But there's so much more that goes into it. And it's so tough to win, and it ultimately will be the great determination of success. But you can be great with, like, you can be considered great without one.
Right. And look, things can always play out. Like last year, I thought the Jets were going to win that division. I still believe, I can say it comfortably. That team, roster-wise, top to bottom, was probably the most talented roster in that division. But Aaron Rodgers got hurt 6 seconds into a game, and they had to play with Zach Wilson.
Right.
But that defense was one of the better defenses in the NFL, and they still had all those skill position players with Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. Like, they had a ton of talent, but because they lost Aaron Rodgers because of an injury, am I supposed to evaluate that team stunk because of their franchise quarterback getting hurt?
No, sports are weird, which is why you have to enjoy these types of conversations we're having about the Eagles and the offense maybe being the best in franchise history, because all you can do is put the guys on the field that you believe give yourself the best chance to win, coach them the right ways. And the Eagles have done that to this point. So we should be ecstatic about it. And everything past this, we'll reevaluate. But these are the good conversations to be having, because this is a hard part of the sport too.
Right.
It's not just the games. It's getting to this point, being comfortable that your team has a ceiling of Super Bowl.
At least we get to
the Eagles
have
do.
the conversation.
Exactly.
Right? Like, nobody's having this conversation about the New England Patriots.
No,
right? We're
the
having this
Carolina
conversation.
Panthers.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
By the way, some more NFL news. Per Jordan Schultz, it looks like Juju Smith-Schuster is heading back to the Chiefs. I hate that man.
What?
Juju Smith-Schuster.
Why him?
Everything after the Super Bowl. How much smack he talked when he barely did anything. He got held on a play.
Yeah. I don't know.
You went to TikTok and all his Instagrams.
I haven't thought about Juju Smith-Schuster since that.
I hate that.
I don't really.
Well, you just thought about him because he's back.
Yeah.
All right, 9 o'clock hour is ahead. We'll get to more of your text messages. Also, Dave Zangaro's 53-man roster prediction. I think he batted 1,000. It's Kincade and Salciunas, 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
The bats come alive.
1 on Kincade and Salciunas. John out for the week. Connor in for John. I hope you had a safe trip into work today. I apologize. I forgot to wish you a safe drive in. And apparently we had a great point by one of our texters. B. Gunn told me during the break that I usually say have a safe trip, and then I drop the Ted Lasso news while people were driving, which may have been bad for some people.
Yeah, you get so excited, you lose track of the steering wheel.
I didn't know how that you didn't know. It came out on Saturday. I don't know how you missed that 2 days ago.
I had no idea. I kind of disconnected this weekend a little bit. Once we got done the pregame show, I had a bunch of stuff going on. Went to the Eagles game.
That's true, yeah.
Played a round of golf. Saw some buddies for one of my friend's birthdays. So it was a busy weekend. I wasn't caught up on my Ted Lasso stuff.
All right, well, Ted Lasso's back. Season 4, they will be writing soon, and all the casts come back, and I absolutely love that.
Are the Phillies back?
Well, we'll find out. Coming up in a little bit, we're going to go through Dave Zangaro's prediction or projection, I should say, of his 53-man roster. And I don't think there's a spot on here where he's wrong. I think he's 100% on this.
Interesting.
And that's tough because there will be some people that probably go, oh, I'd rather have this guy like the defensive tackle position. Some people would rather have 6 instead of 5. But we'll go through it coming up in a few minutes. But just to reset today's topics, you can text and you can call in 610-632-0975. 2 of them are fandom questions. 1, do you like it when you hear people talk about how good your team could be or how good your team is during a season before you got to the playoffs? I go back to what we were saying about the Phillies back in July, that it may be the greatest season in Phillies franchise history. And at the time, they were on pace for it. The problem was pace still had to happen. They didn't keep up that pace. They had a horrible month-and-a-half stretch, and that's why they're not going to reach that 2011 Phillies team unless they go on an absolute tear. And we'll see if that happens or not. The time will still tell. But do you like hearing stuff like, this Eagles team could be the best team in the NFC? John is predicting them to win the 1 seed and be in the NFC Championship game. Do you like hearing that stuff in August before anything even starts playing? Which led to another question. Does it mean anything? When you hear me say that this offense should be the best offense in the NFC, if you compare skill position players and quarterback and offensive line, the full totality of the offense, this offense with the Lions and the 49ers, they are in a class of their own. And I think the Phillies should get the edge over both of those teams. But if they don't win anything, does that mean anything to you? We had our caller Q that straight up said, if you don't win anything, what does it matter? All those conversations end up being nothing. I'd rather enjoy a season. Obviously, a championship is a much more added bonus, but I don't want to. If the Eagles end up having the number 1 offense, but their defense is just bad and they lose in the NFC Championship game because of it, I don't want to ignore the fact that this offense was high-powered 5-6 years from now.
Well, here's the thing. If you were born in the year 1984, just on that championship conversation, you would have seen in however many years, what is that, 40 years?
Yeah.
You would have seen 2 seasons that were happy seasons for you?
Yeah.
Like,
then what's the point of being a Philadelphia sports fan, right?
I'm going to have 2 points of happiness in 40 years. I'm going to go insane. I'm going to pick up puzzles or scrapbooking or something. Like, I can't consume sports that way. I have to enjoy what we get. And it doesn't mean that that's the end-all, be-all. It doesn't mean I don't want to see the teams win a championship. But I cannot sit around and wait for there's one goal, and if you don't get it, everything else doesn't matter. No, you have to be able to find joy in the other stuff.
You say that, but there are people that don't.
Okay, well,
like there are people that say the championship is the ultimate goal. I've read that. I brought up the tweet from Kevin Durant multiple times. Kevin Durant is wondering why championships are the only reason why somebody should have a legitimate legacy. And if you don't win a championship, does that mean you stink? Right? Like Carmelo Anthony is a Hall of Famer. Guy never won a title in the NBA. Does that mean he stinks?
No,
because he didn't win. Allen Iverson never won a championship in the NBA. Does that mean he stinks?
Also, no.
No, but I think a lot of people in the moment go, that's what it's all about. Like, I think one day people will look back at Joel Embiid fondly. But living through it right now, there are people that go, he's never won anything. He's never going to win anything. There might be people that say the same thing about the Eagles. Oh, with Nick Sirianni as the head coach, they're never going to win anything. So what's the point of me even really, truly getting excited for a season?
Well,
Other than just the Eagles being back.
I don't know, man. And I know I talked about like the day-to-day and trying to look into the future, but part of it also is enjoying where you're at. It's like the combination of the positivity of the two. And this is part of who I am as a sports fan and a person, but like whether I think a team is going to win let's look at this Eagles team. I don't know if they're going to win the Super Bowl or not. But if they go out and beat the Packers by 40 in Brazil,
right,
on international television, not just national TV, no, like big time stage to start the season against a good team, I'm not going to be thinking, well, yeah, but if they don't win the Super Bowl, that doesn't matter. I'm going to be enjoying it. If they have a great regular season, I'm going to enjoy it. And if I believe they're set up to do that, I'm going to enjoy that. I'm going to enjoy all the positivity that I can get with these sports teams because you know what we're realizing, Andrew, as you and I age, and I think some people have already seen this, if they're have been around the block a little bit, there's going to be a lot more sadness than there is happiness.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely in life, and of course also here,
I meant sports-wise. Let's not get too deep with it, but you're going to lose a lot more. There will be more seasons where you don't win the championship than you win. So you have to find a way to find joy in the ones where you don't, or you're going to drive yourself insane.
And look, I get it. Context is also important. Like, this is year 3 of this Phillies team, right? So there were people that didn't care about the success in April and May and June and even the first half of July because they said, well, they better win a World Series because we are now in a mode of World Series or bust. I get why people say the things that they say about the Sixers. The Eagles are probably getting to that territory, by the way. They were in the Super Bowl, in the playoffs 3 years ago, in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Last year had a collapse after starting 10-1. There are probably people out there that go, they better be even more than 10-1, or they better be better than 11-6, go deep in the playoffs, and if not, fire Nick Sirianni. Like, there are going to be people that say if they don't get to the NFC Championship game, Nick Sirianni should be fired. And I might be one of them, depending on how it plays out.
I can't believe maybe this is a conversation for tomorrow. Maybe we just discovered something for tomorrow's show. I can't believe that there would be anyone that would argue that the Eagles are not already there. Where it's Super Bowl or bust, expectations are crazy high. Like, we don't want to say it because we want to see something first, but let's not kid ourselves. If this team is as good as we think they are, and they go to the NFC Championship game against San Francisco or Detroit, we said earlier in this very program, those are teams that are comparable, if not teams that the Eagles may have an edge against.
Right.
I'm not going to be happy with them losing in a big spot to those teams.
No, and look, I touched on this a little bit last week, and yes, you know what? Let's dive deeper into it tomorrow. Howie Roseman probably has Super Bowl or bust expectations, which is why he goes out and trades for Jahan Dotson.
Dude, he did the shot with Jason Kelsey 2 years ago to Vegas, talking about let's go to the Super Bowl. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
No, there's not. Yep, you're right. All right, you can text and call in 610-632-0975. We look at Dave Zangaro's roster projection coming up in a few minutes, but what do we have on the text line there, B-Gun?
Yeah, we got Eddie in Wallingford checking in. He says, I love to hear the great things about this Philadelphia Eagles offense and everything else as well. And the thing we're forgetting is they had talent last year. The issue was the scheme and everything that went into that with Nick Sirianni and Brian Johnson. This year, the scheme is going to be much better with Kellen Moore, so I expect them to live up to the expectations.
Yes, I agree. I agree with that. Look, I mean, this team, and that's why somebody said earlier, we have to see how it plays out first or whatever. Like, this is the same team, a lot of players, at least offensively, that were on the Super Bowl 2 years ago.
And part of the reason
7 of the starters are back.
Right. Part of the reason we believe so much in last year's team in spite of the coordinators too, because people might be like, well, how did we overlook the coordinators? Did we have, are we doing the same thing with Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio? Well, part of the reason is they were coming off a Super Bowl appearance. So it was just like, you'd be dumb not to believe in the team that won the Super Bowl to come back and create it, right? Now, the fact that we're ready to believe in this team in spite of the collapse and what they're coming off of last year, it just shows me that we have something that's more legitimately tangible here.
All right, we'll get back to the text in a little bit, but let's check this out. So, I believe Dave Zangaro batted 1,000 here.
Okay.
On his roster projection.
Might need him in some red pinstripes soon, if so.
Maybe. And I'm sure there will be some people that have some issues with it because they may think they should carry an extra lineman versus an extra cornerback or something. We just talked about this during the pregame show on Saturday. Bill Colarulo won 6 defensive tackles. Dave Zangaro on here has 5. So we'll run through this. I believe Dave Zangaro is batting 1,000, and we'll find out, I guess, when do they have to do it? By Tuesday, tomorrow. Wow, okay.
Big turnaround, huh?
have a lot of guys they got to cut down. They got to go from 90 to 53 by 4 o'clock tomorrow. So we'll probably start getting some whispers today, I imagine. Like, we'll probably start hearing some things here and there. And we'll have Jeff McClain on tomorrow at 8:10, as we do every single Tuesday, to talk more about it. But here is his 53-man roster projection. Quarterbacks, 3 of them: Hurts, Pickett, Tanner McKee. Will Greer out.
Simple.
Okay, boom. Running backs. We talked about this on Saturday. They typically carry 4. Dave Zangaro does not believe there's a 4th running back worthy of being carried. So it's Saquon Barkley, Kenneth Gainwell, Will Shipley. I can't disagree with that.
Yeah, like the guy Nichols that they have that would probably be the next guy. You could probably get him to the practice squad.
I'm sure they can. Yeah.
No worries.
Wide receiver. Now, this one might be where we have most conversation. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Jahan Dotson. Lock, right?
Yep.
Nobody's debating that. Britton Covey, him not dressing on Saturday was a telltale sign this guy's going to make the team.
He's been on the team since jump shot.
Yeah, especially because of his ability to play in the special teams. Now, that leaves 2 wide receiver spots because Dave has them carrying 6, which if you're only carrying 3 running backs, then of course you're going to carry 6 receivers. He has Austin Watkins, Jacob Harris, Griffin Hebert. He's not Herbert. Hebert.
No, I'm aware.
Not making the team, as well as Joseph Ngata, John Ross, and Paris Campbell. So Johnny Wilson and Anais Smith, which I'm not surprised. They're 2 draft picks.
Right, it makes sense.
And I talked about this with you and Bill on Saturday. If I was a rebuilding team, Anais Smith is not going to win you a game or 2 and get you out of the top draft pick spot.
Yes.
If you're the New York Giants, a lot of people believe the Giants might be drafting 1 overall. Adding Anais Smith to the team is not going to make Daniel Jones some superior player. But adding Anais Smith, taking him away from your divisional rival, and maybe being a part of a new look offense that we will see next year might be a good place to start, especially with Malik Neighbors. Now you have 2 rookie wide receivers getting an opportunity to play with one another. Same thing with Johnny Wilson. So you wouldn't want to risk sending those guys to the practice squad.
No, and Johnny Wilson legitimately made the team.
Yes, he did.
That guy's going to be on the roster.
Yes.
But Anais Smith, all it is who would you lose more sleep over if they went to the Cowboys or the Commanders or the Giants? Would it be Anais Smith or would it be Paris Campbell?
Right, exactly.
It's pretty simple. It'd be the young guy.
Tight ends. Dallas Goedert, Grant Calcaterra, and our man Andrew DeCecco's guy, E.J. Jenkins.
Ooh, okay.
So he does not have Albert O on here. He might fall to the practice squad. No, I mean, he hasn't had a great camp. Offensive linemen, he has them carrying 9. Mailata, Dickerson, Juergens, Becton, Johnson, Tyler Steen, Fred Johnson, Trevor Keegan, the draft pick, as well as Dylan McMahon, draft pick. So Brett Toth is finally done. He was horrible.
Yeah, but your boy...
my man, Matt Hennessy, Temple made, Temple proud on the way out. But I don't know. I can't disagree with any of those.
No.
He has 5 defensive tackles. This is one area where maybe some nitty-gritty football guys, if we're talking about the 6th defensive tackle, people will have a problem with. He has Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Milton Williams, Marlon Teopolotu, and Mauro Ojomo as the 5 tackles. That means Thomas Booker, who actually had a decent camp, is not making the team. Neither is Penn State's P.J. Mustipher and Gabe Hall. I know Bill wanted Mustipher to make it, but he does not have him on there. And, here's the thing. So you might say, I think P.J. Mustipher should be on it. Is there a name that I've mentioned so far that shouldn't make the team?
No.
There hasn't been one.
No, you've got it absolutely nailed down so far, according to Dave Zangaro.
Edge rushers, Josh Sweat, Bryce Huff, Brandon Graham, Nolan Smith, Jalix Hunt. Of course, they're not going to let him go. And then Patrick Johnson, who's had a good camp, but he's also a special teams body that you need to have.
That makes total sense as well. And that's easy because just all those guys fit perfectly with that idea. You don't have I don't know. Do you feel like they have depth there? Would you look at edge rusher as a position of depth potentially?
No. No. You know how I feel about edge rusher. No.
Yeah.
I don't think. Look, if Patrick Johnson has to play, you're in trouble.
No, I got you.
Jalix Hunt, I know he's popped off with his athleticism. We'll see how he shows in a game if he actually gets an opportunity to play. Brandon Graham, I love having him there as the veteran leadership and vibes and all that kind of stuff.
What is he as a player?
I'm not expecting much out of him, and I'm not expecting much out of Nolan Smith until I see it. I'm not expecting much out of Nolan Smith. So, yeah, you have 6 bodies, but even the 2 starters in Bryce Huff and Josh Sweat I have questions about.
Maybe it's just because I consider, like, when I think depth, my mind immediately goes there when I hear, like, the 5th and 6th guy at the position, and I think of them somewhat in the conversation with the 2nd and 3rd guy. But you're absolutely right. If you don't have a lot of faith in, like, that 2nd or 3rd guy, well, that probably means you just have a bunch of...
Right. I mean, that goes back to the less is more thing. Like, sometimes if you have less guys, but they're all extremely talented, then that's fine.
Fair point.
If you have a bunch of guys and like linebacker, it's Devin White, Nakobe Dean, Zach Bond, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., and Ben Van Sumer. And he does not have Oren Burks making the team. Burks just basically hurt the entire camp. 5 linebackers, but there's not a single linebacker where you go, I feel great about him.
No.
Devin White, you hope he can get back to form. Nakobe Dean, I have no faith in until I see it, just like the Nolan Smith situation. Zach Bond's playing a new position, so I can't really have an educated statement on Zach Bond. Jeremiah Trotter Jr., okay, he's a draft pick. You're going to keep him on the roster. And Ben Van Sumeren is a tackle machine, right? But Ben Van Sumeren wasn't on a roster at one point last year. They picked him up midway through.
Yeah, that's like a great point, and it's just a reminder of where they're at with the linebacker room, and it's why the rest of this defense has to... I don't really like this so far. I think you're incepting me a little bit because you don't like the edge rusher. Not that you don't like the edge rushers, but you're more critical of where they're at than I am.
I'm not ready to put too much faith in the edge rushers.
But now, through 2 levels of the defense, I'm like...
Corners. This will make you feel better. Okay. Corners, it's Darius Slay, Quinyon Mitchell, Isaiah Rodgers, Keely Ringo, Cooper DeJean, and Eli Ricks. He has 6 corners making the roster. You're not going to keep more than that. Zach McPherson on his way out. I remember he transferred out of Penn State to get playing time, and he, because he wasn't good enough at the...
he made it to the NFL level.
He did.
But, I really like that corner room.
Yeah. Josh Jobe on his way out. It was a shame that he had to play last year. But, yeah, so 6 corners. Safety, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Reed Blankenship, Avonte Maddox, and Tristan McCollum. Sidney Brown, obviously, on the PUP list to start the season. He does not have James Bradbury making the roster. I'm still wondering why he did not play in that final preseason game. I wonder if they're hoping to ship him out for something. Because it's not like he did anything to deserve to not play.
Unless he, tweaked something and was like, I don't know, if I don't make this team, I want to be healthy to be signed by somebody else.
Could be.
And he's just like, I don't want to do it, but I don't know. That points to him not being on the team.
Right. Lastly, special teams, Jake Elliott, Braden Mann, Rick Lovato. I don't think, out of all that, and I'll ask both of you guys, B-Gun as well, is there a name on there where you go, that guy probably shouldn't make the team, or that guy should make the team? I don't think so. I think Dave Zangaro has this perfect.
Yeah, I don't have any argument against it. Now, I will say, like you talked about the nitty-gritty football guys, I'm not are they carrying 5 or are they carrying 6 defensive tackles guys? I'm not. If that affects your season, when you have a team this talented, a lot of stuff has gone wrong already, and I'm probably already to a point where I'm done with you. So, yeah, when you get into depth, maybe. But to me, everybody who should be on the team is on the team. Everyone who shouldn't be isn't.
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you. I mean, I can't complain. And the only guy who I don't think should technically be on the roster was Aniyah Smith. And for all the reasons you laid out, he's going to be on the roster.
Yeah.
He was always going to be on this roster. So I can't complain about it if and when it happens. There's a couple defensive backs that are on the edge of it. If they go, I'm going to be sad, like an Eli Ricks. I think there's potential there. But if they move on from him, whatever. Like, it's not going to make or break the season.
Right. Okay. All right. So we'd love to get some of your reaction on that and also today's topics. You can climb in 610-632-0975. Phillies, of course, still on the table as well. We don't want them to get lost in the fold, but we talked about them early on, and obviously we got into a discussion about Taijuan Walker and how he should not pitch again the rest of the season. But coming up next, preseason we know is finally over. We know that the Stars didn't play. There's no more preseason football left. Nick Sirianni expanded on his reasonings. He explained himself. And then he was asked if he's worried about a slow start. Here are those answers coming up next. It is Kincade and Salciunas. Connor in for John this week, right here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
The bats come up.
right, it is 9:29 on Kincade and Salciunas, 97.5 The Fanatic. Connor in for John this week. And preseason football is finally over. Thank God we get to celebrate the return to the Eagles coming up in less than 2 weeks. Next Friday will be opening kickoff for the Eagles. Next Thursday will be opening kickoff for the NFL when the Chiefs and Ravens take on one another. But, of course, we're going to be locked into the Eagles, and we'll be locked in to see how well the offense looks early on because obviously one of the big talking points this preseason, this training camp, was whether or not the Eagles should play their starters in the preseason games. And I know every single argument that there is for it or against it. And the ones that are against it is, hey, we want them to stay healthy. Guys like Bill Colarulo say, hey, what is one series going to do for a team come week one? I think it's just getting some nerves out of the way. So Nick Sirianni eventually opted into not having the offensive starters play. The defensive stars did play. I think that was more of a Vic Fangio decision than a Nick Sirianni decision. And we remember that last year after the Patriots game, he said that if he were able to do it all over again, he would have had his players play in the preseason. Now, he decided to not do that this year. And he was asked about it following the final preseason game, and it's basically the last day we can have this conversation until we find out how things work week one against the Packers. Here he was when he was asked once again about his decision to not play the starters in the preseason offensively.
Take everything into account of how many reps you got. I'd say this week we had two. We didn't have a joint practice this week, but we had two joint practices, two inter-squad practices that were scrimmages. Everything up front is live. The only thing that's not live is the tackling to the ground. So the receivers are live, except for they're not getting tackled. Everything is completely live. And so we felt like the work that we got in the joint practice versus the Patriots, the inter squad that we had at the stadium prior to our first preseason games, and then the two inter squads scrimmages that we had. Was our work for the ones, and that's why we decided that way to go that way.
Now you know how I feel. Everything's live. It's not.
No,
because
I don't buy that either.
An edge rusher can't finish a play, and if an edge rusher can't finish a play, that means he can't tackle the quarterback, or even touch the quarterback.
And if you can't do that, you're pulling up like 3 to 4 steps, so you don't roll into someone and. Yeah.
And now the quarterback has more time to find a receiver downfield, and eventually the wide receiver will win the battle, right? Like, that's why I don't put stock into the ridiculous tracking of completion percentage for Jalen Hurts during camp and the stupid historic no interceptions thrown, blah, blah. Like, I don't do that nonsense. I don't buy into that nonsense. Whether he had 1 million interceptions or 0 interceptions, I'll wait and see how it plays out during the regular season.
I feel like 1 million might have been a lot, but I understand your point.
And that probably would have caused some concern, right? But let's say he had 10 picks compared to the one that he ended up throwing, it wouldn't have made a difference to me, all right? Because what they do is not live. Like, Nick Sirianni can say it's live all he wants. It's not. Like, taking batting practice before a baseball game is not the same as seeing a real pitcher.
Like live at bats. Even live at bats, it's tough to say are live.
It's still more, though, because, again, if you ever watch batting practice before a baseball game, the guy that's throwing BP is 45 inches away from the plate, 45 feet away from the plate.
No, you're right, but I'm saying even further. Like, let's say you take live at bats. There's not a whole team out there. So, like, you might sting one that you're like, that's through the hole. In an actual game, backhand, you're gone.
Right, exactly.
So, like, there's one thing that simulates game, and it's
actually playing. And in a preseason game, even though everybody wants to get out of there healthy, once they get on the field, they're playing a specific way. The way that they had been training to play their entire lives. And that's actually finishing plays. That is live, not what you did in training camp. But okay, so be it. We know what ended up happening. So he was then asked, is he worried about a slow start?
No, I kind of the same thing. I just answered him why I didn't play him, as it means I'm right. If I was worried that we weren't going to get a good start, I'd play him. But because of all the work we have, I'm not worried about that. We got to go out there and play and execute now. But now I'm comfortable.
All right, good. He's comfortable. He's not worried. That's great. You just better come out the gate strong.
Well, here's the way I look at it, right? Because that's kind of what I've been arguing the whole time in this argument is they got to believe that they're good to go.
Right.
And then it goes into a conversation of whether or not you trust their evaluation, which we're going to find out the same time as everybody else when we see them week 1 against the Packers in Brazil. Here's what I will say. I don't think that there is any way, no shot, 0% chance. I get mad at John sometimes for doing the 0% chance thing. There's a 0% chance that Nick Sirianni doesn't know that his job is in some kind of jeopardy.
Right.
And on top of that, there's like, if you were in that position, I want everyone to like answer this question to themselves. If you were in that position where you're like, my job is on the line this year, and you're choosing to not only go against what you said last year in the year that put your job on the line, but you're rolling into a season that's going to basically make or break your NFL career as a head coach with less than you possibly could have done. Unless Nick Sirianni is a stone-cold moron, and I don't think he is at all. Like I don't. I'm talking not even like a bad football coach. I'm talking like a moronic individual person.
Okay, yeah. Well, he reads books on leadership, so he's smart.
No, he's clearly an intelligent person. Like, I do not think you would roll into a season where your job's on the line and say, yeah, this could help us, but we're not going to do it. Like, that is the stone-cold, like, indicator of he believes to his core they are ready enough. Because if he didn't, and his job's on the line, you'd have to play.
Now, I'm honestly curious, and I wonder, I'll ask Jeff this tomorrow, and maybe it'll eventually be asked of Nick Sirianni at some point. Remember, he said that the weather was the reason why the starters did not play in the first preseason game. If it was a perfect day weather-wise, which the field ended up being fine, right? Do you think he was never going to play them? Because I get obviously they weren't going to play him Saturday in preseason week number 3. I understood why they wouldn't play them in preseason week number 2, especially because the weather wasn't great there either. But the reasoning in the beginning was the weather is the reason why we're not playing in preseason week number 1. We'll see what happens preseason week number 2. I don't think they would have played him, even if the weather was perfect.
I think they would have, but I think it was one of those situations. You ever have plans where you're like, I really don't want to do this. I already made these plans. I'm going to go unless one minor inconvenience comes up that I could use where I don't have to, like...
You can ask my wife's friends why we're never...
Yeah, right? I don't want to go to my friend's, like, dog's birthday party or something. So if one thing comes up, if it's slightly breezy, I'm going to blame that and be like, nah, I can't go. I do think there was a world where the Philadelphia Eagles offensive starters played in that game. But I think it was a hair's away from an excuse to not do it. And that's what we got with the weather, and that's why I brought it up.
Okay. Yeah, because I just wondered if he was ever going to not play them.
I think he was going to play them. I think there is a possibility that they could have played. Like, I don't think it was a predetermined, and he just used the weather as an excuse. But I think it was if anything at all makes me uncomfortable, quick trigger on the eject button on that.
Okay. All right. What do we got on the text line, B Gun? You can text the show at 610-632-0975. I'm just glad that this conversation could come to an end, that we're done with preseason, even though I didn't agree with the practices. The practices I'm not playing in the preseason. I'm glad that it's over with. We get back to real football talk over the next week, over the next 2 weeks, because week 1 is Friday, September 6th. I can't believe it. What do we got on the text line?
Yeah, we got Ken in Lewistown checking in, and it's kind of a timely text. He says, I'm totally stoked about the potential of this Eagles team and all the hype around the offense. However, my gut tells me we may have to wait a few games to see it come to fruition. But this team should get hot at the right time, barring any catastrophic injuries. To key players, go Birds.
Yeah, and that goes back to our patience conversation that we've been having. And, I've said this a lot of times. If they score 24 points in week 1, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, my God, they should have scored 31 if they play in the preseason, right? It's just if it's like 17, and if it looks like the offense is stalling, or the first 15 scripted plays, you only get to like midfield,
right?
And in the second possession, you go 3 and out. Like, I can't see that. And then that goes back to the patience conversation. And you have been telling me to be patient. Andrew DeCecco have been telling me to be patient. It all depends on the context.
Right.
Like, I expect this team to eventually average around 30 points a game. If they only score 24 in week 1, that's fine, depending on how it looks.
Yes, exactly. But that's the point. You're bringing up like a dramatic example of what could go wrong. And if that happens, Andrew DeCecco and Bill Colarulo and myself and anyone who preached patience, we're going to be as worried as other people. If it's like they come out there and they score 2 touchdowns and they can't move the ball and that's it, everybody's going to be worried whether you preach patience or not. But I think what we're talking about...
Well, then how would you be worried if you're preaching patience? Because then that means you say, oh, well, week 2 could be better.
No, so you're viewing this too much from your rational point of view. There are going to be people out there that if they score 24 points and there's like a missed run route or something, they're going to believe that they should have been able to convert that pass opportunity. If Jalen Hurts turns the wrong way on a play and does one of those where you've seen it where they fake a handoff, but you hand it the wrong way where the running back is. Like if there's any type of miscommunication on offense, there are going to be people who believe they should have played because they're afraid of the collapse.
I think you can preach patience when you turn over every stone to get to the best of your abilities prior to week 1. Like if they played in the preseason and things weren't clicking right away because the offense is still new and there's new terminology and they tried their best to get there, then you can practice and preach patience. But if they didn't try in the preseason and it comes out slow, then I think you can fault them for that.
And he's telling you that we are comfortable that we're good right away. Then, again, you better back it up.
I'm trying to save people from themselves. That's what I'm doing here.
Well, you can't save me. It's how I feel. It's my opinion. It's my belief.
I understand, but I'm telling you and it's not so much you, but there are going to be people that if they score like 21 points in this game against the Packers, say the offense is not good enough and they should have played win or lose. And I can't deal with that, man. I can't do a whole season of like they're not living up to it again because I think this team is talented.
Well, it wouldn't be a full season, but like if it's 3 or 4 weeks of it, then we'll talk about
no. We talked about the Eagles needing to get off to a fast start. This fan base needs to get off to a fast start. I can't have people start to turn negative week 1 because you know what happens? It snowballs into every last thing is a problem and the collapse is happening again. And I'm not going to consume a football season like that. I'm already losing my mind about consuming a baseball season like that. I'm not doing it for the Philadelphia Eagles. We know this team is good. We know they're going to be in the postseason. We know they're probably going to win the division. And I'm not going to lose my mind week 1 because they scored 7 less points than we think they're capable.
But can they win the conference if they go out there and don't?
Well, that's a huge legitimate thing, Connor. Like, don't do the stop. Like, if they lose because their offense was not prepared in week 1 against the Packers, they could very well miss out on an opportunity to be in the 1 seed or the 2 seed. We don't know. Like, this is a big game. If it was Packers and Sao Paulo week 3 and your first 2 weeks were Saints and Bucks, totally different conversation. Just like how last year they benefited from it being Patriots and then Vikings and then Bucks the first 3 weeks. They're starting off against a conference rival in terms of top seed.
This team is good enough that they should be able to get to their goals even if they don't. And I think they win week 1, but even if they don't.
The Packers might be good enough too. And if they have the week 1 advantage, it's the head-to-head. That's the first tiebreaker.
I don't buy that team as much.
Okay.
We'll get it. That'll be a conversation more for next week with the matchup.
It will. All right, coming up next, we have the Kincade Salciunas Key 3. But also, I don't know how this happens during a preseason football game. We'll talk about it next. It's just ridiculous. Kincade and Salciunas, 97.5 The Fanatic.
Mike Missanelli.
It is 9:47 on Kincade and Salciunas here on 97.5 The Fanatic. Connor Thomas has been in for John today. He will be all week long. And so that's why when you listen to the Kincade and Salciunas Key 3, you'll hear Connor's voice in it a lot. And here it is.
Now, the Kincade and Salciunas Key 3. Today's best.
Before we even see a drive or a snap, it's kind of weird for me to say that this is the best offense ever.
A couple years ago, that version of Connor would have said, dude, you're crazy. Look how talented this team is. Look at the names. Look at the coaching staff. Look at what we've heard and read from beat reporters. Everything is pointing in the right direction. It makes so much sense to believe in this team. And as much as I'm a move on from last year guy, you do still have to consider that last year made so much sense for that team to be good. Last year had a lot of talent. And I'm not just saying just like one collapse has to carry over. But once you believe that there's a 1% chance that that's possible in any season, it's hard to believe something without seeing it anymore.
I get the collapse. I'm not even thinking about it that way. I look at this team on paper and I go, yeah, this is great. But again, it's only on paper.
Pitching wins in October. And what really made the rotation amazing to start the season is Ranger Suarez was kind of that bridge between, hey, we have these great guys at the front that we paid, and Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola. We believe in them long term. We have these guys we're not too sure we're getting out of, and Christopher Sanchez and Taijuan Walker. One of those great, one of those awful. And Ranger Suarez was the bridge that covered the gap between the high-end starters. He's so important to making momentum happen, and that's a beautiful thing to see. The offense, you got back-to-back 4-hit games from individual players, but the whole team is putting better. I was reading something from Matt Gelb on The Athletic talking about the percentage of breaking balls they've seen. They saw more in the series against the Royals. They made a quick adjustment. They attacked the way that they were being attacked.
I'm not saying they're back by any means, because just because they beat a team with a plus 500 record, I was refusing to say that they were back on that West Coast trip. I refused to say that they were back after winning 4 in a row, 1 against the Marlins, 3 against the freaking Nationals. They scored 26 runs in this series. You know how many home runs they hit this series?
4.
3. It was a lot of doubles. There was small ball. There was base hits. There was hitting behind runners. I mean, they look like a baseball team this weekend. Taijuan Walker is so bad right now and has been all season long. Like, let's not act like, oh, he's just having a bad stretch. He has been bad since the beginning of the season. Taijuan Walker has been so bad that he deserves to be placed into the mop-up role. He has not done anything for you to say this guy is deserving for another shot in the rotation, or, hey, let's try to see if we can turn him into a closer like Brett Myers. This guy's done nothing to deserve it. He should not be on a major league roster, but I understand the contract and why you would kind of have to keep him on a roster. If you have to keep him on a roster, make him Dylan Covey, right? Make him the guy that's going to only be your long reliever in spots when you're up 10 or down 10. He should not pitch in a meaningful inning the rest of this season. Meaningful inning as a starter, which means first inning of a baseball game. He should not come into the second inning. If you did an opener, he should not come in out of the bullpen as some sort of middle reliever or long reliever unless your starting pitcher, God forbid, gets hurt in the first inning. I feel supremely confident that he's going to have a great season. I don't believe he'll be as close to perfect as 2022. I know how it's going to go. Somebody's going to say, oh, look, Andrew, his numbers are better. How did you not see this coming? There's an eye test thing. His numbers last year were better than 2 years ago.
Like
was
the
he better?
Overall, the compiling of numbers.
Right. Was he better than 2022 last season? No. Absolutely not. 2022, he was damn near perfect. I don't think he'll get to that again. But can he come close to that? Can he still be an MVP candidate? Absolutely. And I think he's going to bounce back this season. I think we're going to feel much better about Jalen Hurts. I'm surprised that there are still people that are wondering if we're going to see it.
Also, he doesn't need to be. We've talked about all this stuff with the weapons that he has available, and normally it goes to the pass catch. Like the best running back that Jalen Hurts has had, what, Miles Sanders in 22? But I don't think anyone's mistaking Miles Sanders for Saquon Barkley. How much easier does that make life to have a premier running back for Jalen Hurts where it's almost too big to fail?
All right, that's the Kincade and Salciunas Key 3, the 3 best minutes from today's show. But, of course, that was Connor Thomas's voice. John is out for the week. He will be back on Tuesday following Labor Day.
My brain feels empty.
Come on, man. His brain is never empty. Trust me.
Almost too full.
Trust me, his brain is never empty.
Ah, man. I hope he's enjoying. He was texting us this weekend. He's excited about the week down the shore. So
yes, I'm happy for him. He actually asked me about my hometown because he drove through Mullica Hill. He took the 322. He is a backroads guy.
Yeah.
He's stone cold. I'm not going to take the expressway or 55. I'm going to take the back road. So he drove through my old hometown, and he's like, this was your old hometown, right? I go, yeah. And he said, it's a beautiful town. I said, yeah, it was a great place to grow up until you turned about 16. And then you're like, what the hell do you do around here? And when I said that, he goes, I was literally saying in the car to his wife, Christina, what did he do when he was growing up? And I was like, yeah, that's why I started drinking at a young age.
Man, you play baseball?
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing else to do.
You learn sports.
Lots of woods to go find a spot to drink at.
It's all antique shops. Like, there's nothing to do in Mulligan Hill, but it is a beautiful town. All right, so something that just can't happen in life. I just saw Crossing Broad put out a video of it. There was a fight at the Raiders-49ers preseason game. I think fights in games are already caveman-esque.
Yes.
I have never there was one occurrence where I was involved in an altercation, but that was because a middle-aged man called the girls that we were with, who are our friends, a bunch of whores.
That's not acceptable.
Because somebody a couple rows in front was vaping, and they thought they were spraying perfume.
That's a reasonable
And
reaction.
he was bothered by the smell. And so when they got up to go to the bathroom, he said, good, the whores are leaving.
But here's your answer.
So we had a bit of an altercation, but that had nothing. It wasn't like we were super drunk and my team's better than your team. I don't understand that. I know, like, the whole, that's the way it is here. It doesn't have to be. It really doesn't have to be. And this isn't even a here thing. This happened in Vegas between the Niners and Raiders. In a preseason game, how can you get that worked up?
Yeah. See, I don't even comprehend it ever. I'm a lover, not a fighter. It's not my thing. But I do understand when alcohol is introduced and you have a game and maybe you're not paying much attention to the game because it's preseason week 3 and you don't really care what's going on the field. You start a conversation with the people around you and sometimes it doesn't go well. People are idiots.
How? How does it not go well? Hey, man, good luck this season. You know what? Bleep you. Like, it's not like... just be normal. It's not like this doesn't have to be a political thing or anything. Just be normal.
I've been preaching just be normal my entire life. But it's very difficult for some people, including those two idiots beating their brains in.
Yeah, exactly.
At the preseason game.
I saw a video last week. It was outside of Dallas, outside of the Cowboys Stadium. Cowboys and Rams, I think it was. I'm like, what?
Wow.
What did you say leaving the stadium? Your team sucks? And by the way, if somebody does say that, does that really get to you?
Well, if A.J. Brown was holding out, I'd be upset too.
I guess. All right, well, that'll do it for today. The Mike Missanelli show is coming your way next. Make sure you check them out with Bill and Ray.
And remember to support life-saving cancer research. Join me and our generous partner, H&H Heating and Air Conditioning, in making a donation to the American Association for Cancer Research today at 975thefanatic.com/AACR. Cancer research saves lives.
All right, everybody have a great rest of your day. We'll be back at it tomorrow for another day of Kincade and Salciunas right here on 97.5.